Chapter 856. Wang Lin and the others finally made it back in time. Xiao Yan, Shi Tianhao, Li Yuanfang, and Luo Qinggu were all in high spirits. However, Shi Tianfang, a Tao integration stage cultivator, and the 6 paths of reincarnation Dharma treasure at the pinnacle of the Mahayana realm, were still under immense pressure. Wang Lin unfurled the dark sky god sealing banner and released 3 underworld hall emissaries. They released a large amount of gray mist that formed a giant oval egg. This was the underworld hall's powerful defensive spell, the Dark Sea Barrier. Shi Tianfang pointed a finger at the Dark Sea Barrier, and it immediately began to shake and crack. The primordial spirits of the 3 underworld hall emissaries shook violently and almost shattered. The Dark Sea Barrier could block the attack of Sikongyu, who was at the Void Return realm, but it did not mean that it could block Shi Tianfang, who was at the Tao integration stage. This was under the circumstances that Shi Tianfang had already been injured by Xianli, otherwise, the finger would have completely shattered the Dark Sea Barrier and killed the 3 underworld hall emissaries. However, Shi Tianfang had no choice but to stop on his way to the Jade Capital Mountain. He looked at the white-haired young man before him expressionlessly. Wang Lin's expression was also cold and calm. The 4-faced, 8-armed Dharma idol had already appeared above his head. Above the Dharma idol, the light and shadow of a grand hall gradually solidified. This hall was as lofty as a city, and the main entrance was like a city gate. All the bricks and stones that formed the hall were pitch black. As one approached, one could clearly feel the heavy power contained within it, as well as the unique aura of the almost solidified cycle of life and death. Wang Lin's Yellow Springs 4th technique, Emperor Yan's Hall. Shi Tianfang frowned when he saw Emperor Yan's Hall. Wang Lin, who had yet to form a primordial spirit, was not much of a threat in his eyes. However, Wang Lin's spell gave him a very complicated feeling. It was very familiar, but also very uncomfortable. Deep in his heart, there was even a faint trace of fear and dread. This trace of fear did not come from Wang Lin himself, but from the power of his Emperor Yan's Hall mystique. Although he was unwilling to admit it, there was a voice in Shi Tianfang's heart that told him that Wang Lin's Dharma art actually had a hint of containing and restraining the various techniques of his reincarnation doctrine. This was just a beginning, but Shi Tianfang's cultivation level was at the Tao integration realm, and he had a deep understanding of the Tao of heaven and earth. Just by looking at Wang Lin's Emperor Yan's Hall, he could feel that the Yellow Springs Tao that Wang Lin had created had not reached its end, and there was still potential to be unearthed. If he continued on this path, it would no longer be a mere bud. Instead, it would truly grow into a towering tree. It would truly evolve into a great Tao that could restrain the techniques of the reincarnation sect. It was hard to say if there was a large difference in cultivation level. However, if the cultivation level was the same, or if the difference was very small, then the entire reincarnation sect would have to take a detour when they saw Wang Lin, and even those who cultivated the techniques of Wang Lin's lineage. Otherwise, they would be completely at his mercy. This discovery made Shi Tianfang's murderous intent soar. He slowed down as he descended to the peak of Yujing Mountain. He turned around and pointed again. This time, the Dark Sea Barrier was completely shattered. The 3 underworld hall emissaries wailed as their primordial spirit avatars exploded. Wang Lin's expression did not change at all. He activated the Emperor Yan's Hall mystique to protect himself and patted the flagpole of the Shantian god sealing flag. A violent red light flashed, and blazing lava spewed out. A mighty-looking red-haired elder stepped out. He was one of the 2 grand elders of the Heavenly Pool sect in the past, Elder Hua. When Elder Hua saw Shi Tianfang, who was at the Tao integration realm, he cursed under his breath. However, he was restrained by the Shantian god sealing flag and had no choice but to listen to Wang Lin's commands as he charged toward Shi Tianfang. Shi Tianfang was expressionless. He pointed his finger again, piercing through the blazing flames and arriving before Elder Hua. He pointed his finger at Elder Hua's chest. Elder Hua's chest exploded instantly, and fire splattered everywhere. Little bastard. The hot-tempered Elder Hua was not cursing Shi Tianfang. Instead, he was cursing Wang Lin. However, no matter how displeased he was, he could only continue to charge forward. He transformed into a huge volcano and revealed his return to void Dharma physique. He fought with Shi Tianfang and was almost killed by Shi Tianfang. However, under Wang Lin's commands, he completely disregarded his own safety and fought with his life on the line. From the looks of it, it was clear that he wanted to pose a threat to Shi Tianfang even if he did not care about his own life. Moreover, Wang Lin would not allow him to die in Shi Tianfang's hands for nothing. Therefore, he unleashed his Four Symbols Realm technique and Yellow Springs technique without holding back and joined forces with Elder Hua to attack Shi Tianfang. To Wang Lin, Elder Hua's death did not hurt him at all. However, since he was going to die, he had to make his death worthwhile. He had to make sure Tianfang pay the price. Wang Lin could not form a primordial spirit. Even if the two of them joined forces, Shi Tianfang would not care. However, he did not want to get hurt. The current situation was complicated. Even if they managed to break through Xianmen Tianzong's defense, it was still hard to say who would get the Jade Capital Mountain, White Jade Pillar, and other treasures. He had to ensure that he was in peak condition as much as possible. Since he had already been injured by Xianli, he had to be more careful now. Otherwise, his strength would drop even further. However, even so, he still had the upper hand. Moreover, his advantage continued to expand. Shi Tianfang stared at Wang Lin. His killing intent had already been triggered. In the void, his figure suddenly flashed, and he appeared below Elder Hua's volcano Dharma body. A dazzling colorful pillar of light suddenly appeared above Shi Tianfang's head. It was filled with an immortal and indestructible aura. Reincarnation sect's secret Great Tao technique, immortal heavenly divine light. Sit and watch as all beings enter the cycle of reincarnation. I am immortal and have no limits. This divine power was one of the best divine powers and Dharma spells in the entire reincarnation sect. During the Kunlun Mountain Dharma Assembly, reincarnation sect's heavenly path disciple, Yang Likuan, used this technique to fight against Xianmen Tianzong's disciple, Zhou Yunsong. However, it was countered by Zhou Yunsong. Right now, the same technique was unleashed by Shi Tianfang. The difference was like clouds and mud. Compared to Shi Tianfang, Yang Likuan's immortal heavenly divine light was not even comparable to a firefly. The defensive power of this technique was astonishing. However, when Shi Tianfang used it to attack, its power was equally earth-shattering. It was as though a heavenly pillar of divine light shot into the sky. In an instant, it pierced through Elder Hua's volcano Dharma body from bottom to top. Wang Lin unleashed the true and false realm mystique of the Four Symbols Realm Dharma in an attempt to reverse the outcome. However, between Shi Tianfang's eyes, there was a faint image of the six Daos revolving and the reincarnation of all beings. He saw through the transformation of true and false and displayed the concept of all things becoming void. He actually forced back Wang Lin's true and false realm. At the same time, the dazzling pillar of light continued to expand in all directions. It became thicker and thicker. As Elder Hua roared angrily, it directly caused the volcano to explode from the inside. It disintegrated and shattered into endless streams of fire. The longtime elder of the Tianqi sect had fallen just like that. Wang Lin's Emperor Yan's hall flew over at this moment. Shi Tianfang, who was protected by the immortal heavenly light of the heavenly Tao, also swayed from the impact. Seeing that Elder Hua had been killed, Wang Lin's expression didn't change in the slightest. He didn't stop for a moment and slapped the flagpole again. As a cold light flashed, a white-haired elder in white who exuded waves of chilly aura appeared. It was Elder Ice of the Tianqi sect's Ice and Fire Elders. Elder Ice's gaze kept shifting between Shi Tianfang and Wang Lin. His eyes were filled with rage and helplessness. When he looked at Wang Lin, his heart was filled with even more hatred. However, he still couldn't break free from the shackles of the Shantian God's sealing banner. He could only change his form and reveal his void return realm body just like Elder Hua. Under Wang Lin's command, Elder Ice morphed into an ethereal blue light that resembled icy mist. He took over Elder Hua's position and charged forward to continue his battle with Shi Tianfang. On the other side, Yu Hongyan, Kang Nanhua, and the others also joined in the battle against the other primordial spirit incarnation level enemies. As for Yang Qing, she was directly sent to the peak of the Jade Capital Mountain by Li Yuanfang's Yin and Yang Life and Death Array. After Xianli forced back the Six Paths Will with a sword strike, she was entangled by the falling rocks. The Six Paths Will rotated loudly and landed on the peak of the Jade Capital Mountain. When Yang Qing reached the mountain, she nodded at Li Yuanfang, who was on the branch of the Xian Tianbao treasure, and flew into the All Heavens Hall without saying anything. Yang Qing's gaze swept across the light spheres in the main hall. These light spheres were all small worlds. Inside them were the Foundation disciples on the Cloud Peak, the citizens of the Celestial Sect who were close to the Celestial Sect of the Cloud Mirror City, and many citizens of the Celestial Realm. The true disciples of the various cave abodes were also settled in the mini-worlds of the Divine Sense. Only Dao Yuding stood silently in the center of the hall. She was the backup. If Yang Qing and the others could not make it back in time, she, who had the highest cultivation level among the true disciples, could only replace them at the crucial moment. Seeing Yang Qing's arrival, Dao Yuding bowed and greeted, "Fifth Martial Uncle." Yang Qing nodded calmly. He walked to the steps in front of the main seat and sat down. His eyes, one gold and one green, suddenly turned white and the other black. A bright light flashed on top of his head and a baby emerged, yuanying out of his body. According to the method left by his teacher, Lin Feng, Yang Qing connected his consciousness with the All Heavens Hall. A loud bang sounded in his mind and the scene in front of him changed completely. There was only the endless starry sky and the yellow spring. Above the majestic All Heavens Hall, a bright light suddenly burst out. In the light, above the top of the hall, an illusory nebula gradually condensed into a solid form. It was as bright as the Milky Way, profound, vast, and boundless. As the stars moved, the 7 luminaries of the All Heavens hung above the Milky Way like the ruler of the All Heavens, controlling everything. At the bottom of the hall's 9-story foundation, it was quiet and dark. A luminous wheel was faintly turning as if it was the netherworld samsara. The two forces combined together, and a bright light spread out in all directions. It was like a layer of light film, shrouding the Yujing Mountain, the mystic heavenly treasure tree, and the cyclic purple qi. It became the second layer of defense after the Yin and Yang Life and Death Array. The 6 paths will landed on the light film and shook violently. The wheel rotated and tried to break through the light film, but it failed. The face in the center of the 6 paths will looked at the All Heavens Hall, the faintly discernible foundation, and the wheel that also seemed to be turning non-stop. His expression turned solemn. The defensive seals of the main palace of Xianmen Tianzong, other than the vast power of the All Heavens, even the power of life and death has been melted into it. The 6 paths will was blocked by the All Heavens Hall. In the Yin and Yang Life and Death Array, Shi Tianfang looked at Elder Bing's void-returning Dharma body and Wang Lin expressionlessly. Arcane energy surged out from his body and turned into 6 rays of light, condensing into a wheel that looked exactly like the 6 paths wheel above his head. 6 paths reincarnation Dao fruit. Shi Tianfang activated his Dao fruit and turned it into the 6 paths reincarnation. The surrounding time and space twisted, and everything was dragged into the samsara. Elder Bing and Wang Lin couldn't help but be pulled into the black hole that evolved the 6 paths reincarnation. The scene in front of them was strange and bizarre. Wisps of black air wrapped around their bodies. Chapter 857. In the All Heaven Great Hall, in the small worlds that looked like light spheres, everyone was worried. Ever since they entered Xianmen Tianzong, the sect had never encountered such a critical moment. The mortals from Cloud Mirror City and the Mystic Heaven Realm were quite panicked at this moment. They were afraid that no eggs would remain intact if the nest was destroyed. A few people even secretly complained that Xianmen Tianzong had implicated them, but they had completely forgotten how comfortable their lives were under the glory of the sect. The sect disciples, on the other hand, were optimistic about the situation. They believed that their elders would definitely be able to defeat the enemy, and that their sect would not lose its prestige. Not only the true disciples, but even the foundation disciples were also very confident about the sect. Most of them sighed that their cultivation was too weak, and that they could not contribute their strength to protect the sect. Among the disciples of Fentianya, the fatty Yan Wue snorted and said, "In the future, if we meet the junior disciples of Shu Mountain, Reincarnation Sect, and Eastern Heaven Gate, we will beat them up every time we see them." There was only one true disciple under Luo Qinggu of the Light Dance Pavilion, but he was a slippery young man with a hint of arrogance. He was Han Yang, who had joined the sect during the third opening of the mountain gate. Hearing this, he curled his lips and said, "When we reach the nascent soul realm, we will also visit the sects that broke into the mountain gate today one by one." Hearing this, the others cheered and said, "That's right." Huang Zhenting, who was in the desolate Sky Valley, shouted, "Count me in." Among the disciples of Qian Tian Palace, the dark and thin Ing Luozha grinned and said, "That's exactly what I wanted." Beside him, Yang Tai said silently, "I'm afraid the Patriarch, Master, Uncle Masters, and Uncle Masters won't give us this chance." On the side of Fentianya, a handsome young man beside Yan Wue was Tang Jun, who had joined the sect at the same time as Han Yang. He smiled and said, "This will depend on the Patriarch and the others, but we should always be prepared. Otherwise, we can only watch from the sidelines next time." Yan Wue shushed him. "Don't jinx it. There's no next time." Within the crowd of Fan Lin residents, a girl seemed to be at the center. It was Li Xingfei. Her expression was calm and peaceful, as though she didn't care about what was happening outside. When the others looked at her, their hearts calmed down. Although Li Xingfei's expression was calm, her heart was not calm at all. She was in the spiritual sense pocket, so she didn't understand the situation in the outside world. At this moment, she was worried about whether her master Wang Lin would be able to return in time. In another spiritual sense pocket world, there was a middle-aged couple in the crowd, and the people around them almost subconsciously clustered around them. The middle-aged couple was Wang Lin's parents. The person next to them said in a trembling voice, I say, Uncle, Aunt, we won't be in danger, right?" The others also looked at Wang Lin's parents in shock and fear, hoping to get some accurate information from the couple, or at least some confidence. A crisis that had never happened before made them all flustered. Even though some of the younger people had already started cultivating Dao techniques, at this moment, they were like ants on a hot pan, anxious and uneasy. Wang Lin's parents actually didn't know the exact situation. They only knew that enemies had come to attack the sect that their son was in. They didn't know how many enemies there were, how strong they were, or whether Xianmen Tianzong could defend against them. Wang Lin's parents had been taken care of for years, and their temperament had gradually changed from the villagers of the past. Although they were still simple and honest, at this moment, they were able to calm their hearts. It was just that Xianmen Tianzong was so serious this time, and had all the related people withdraw and protect them in advance, afraid that something might go wrong. From this, it could be seen that the enemies were definitely not simple. At the very least, the current Xianmen Tianzong had to deal with them with all his strength, and had no time to take care of them. Wang Lin's father said in a low voice, "I believe that Lin, and the others will definitely be able to repel the enemies. Now that we have been temporarily placed here, it is also to prevent the fish in the moat from being implicated. Otherwise, if the gods fight, with just a breath, all of us will go to see the King of Hell. When Lin, and the others have repelled the enemies, everything will naturally clear up after the storm. I believe that moment is not far away." Wang Lin's mother's face also revealed a kind smile. "Everyone, relax. Since Lin's fellow sect members have placed us here in advance, they must have made thorough arrangements. We will not be in danger." Feeling the calmness of Wang Lin's parents, the hearts of the surrounding people gradually calmed down. Although their hearts were still beating non-stop, at least it did not form into panic. After calming the crowd, Wang Lin's parents looked at each other, and the old couple sighed. They could faintly see the hidden worry in each other's eyes. "I wonder how Lin, and the others are doing." Wang Lin's mother closed her eyes and prayed, "May the heavens protect me, the celestial gate master protect me, please protect my son." At this moment, Wang Lin, who was in the black hole of the six paths reincarnation, felt his heart thumping. He looked down at the All Heavens Grand Palace, where the defensive mechanisms of the All Heavens Grand Palace were blocking the invasion of the Six Paths Wheel. He now knew that all the disciples of Xianmen Tianzong, all of his clansmen, were there. His father and his mother were there too. That was the last line of defense. Once it was breached, the flames of war would officially engulf the entire Jade Capital Mountain. And if Shi Tianfang, who stood before him, joined in the attack on the All Heavens Grand Palace's defensive mechanisms and attacked together with the Six Paths Wheel, the consequences would be unpredictable. One by one, familiar faces flashed across his mind. The coldness in Wang Lin's eyes gradually faded, and the murderous intent disappeared. His eyes became calm and tranquil, as if he had returned to his true self. On the other side, Elder Bing was sucked into the Six Paths reincarnation, and he screamed in pain. His body was shrouded in black smoke that gushed out from his body. The black smoke was thick, twisted, ferocious, and resentful. Just a glance at it would make one feel as if they had fallen into the reincarnation hell. The black smoke turned into ferocious and mournful faces, twisted and sinister. Most of them were people dressed in the style of the northern militant royal court, but there were also many other people, including the monster race. One of the faces was supposed to be gentle and calm, but at this moment, it was extremely ferocious and terrifying. Elder Bing recognized him. He was the original owner of the Bronze Void Cauldron and Void Mountain River Cauldron, the Mountain River Celestial. 6,000 years ago, the Mountain River Celestial came to the Snow Mountain Lake to search for the karmic firewood, but because he leaked the secret, the Celestial Lake sect became greedy. After they seized the treasure, they suppressed the Mountain River Celestial in the eye of the sea. During the war between the two worlds more than 4,600 years ago, it was Elder Bing who led a few great sages of the monster clan to the eye of the sea and used them to kill the mountain and river supremacy. Then, the Celestial Pool sect used this opportunity to set up an ambush and killed those great sages of the monster clan there. As time passed, everything was gone with the wind, buried in the river of time. But today, Elder Bing finally saw the faces of these people again. He let out a despairing roar. This black smoke was a mysterious karma that originated from his body. At this moment, it was triggered by Shi Tianfang's spell and devoured him. The karma wrapped around him and dragged him into the reincarnation cycle. Wang Lin's expression was calm as he looked at the black bugs crawling all over Elder Bing's body. Each bug had a human face. These people were basically all people who had died because of Elder Bing. They seemed to have transformed into a venomous curse that lingered for a long time. Under the entanglement of the karma, Elder Bing's magic power was limited. Gradually, he was unable to resist the devouring of the six paths of reincarnation and was finally dragged into the black hole. The world of reincarnation spun, and Elder Bing's return to void Dharma body had already disappeared. Wang Lin stared at him and saw a shadow flash before he fell into the beast Dao that was filled with all kinds of birds, beasts, fishes, insects, and ferocious beasts. At this moment, wisps of sinister and terrifying black smoke also surged out from Wang Lin's body and wrapped around him. He had lived for a much shorter time than Elder Bing, but he had killed many people in his life, and his karma seemed to be on par with Elder Bing's. Wang Lin faced him calmly and activated the Yellow Spring's immortal body. His body suddenly disintegrated and turned into the Yellow Spring's true water. As soon as the black karma came into contact with the Yellow Spring's true water, it was immediately purified. Humph. Outside of the six paths of reincarnation, Shi Tianfang's cold snort sounded. In the next moment, red lotuses of flames suddenly lit up in front of Wang Lin. The red lotuses were deep and pure, and they looked like red crystals that were dancing around. The karmic fire of the red lotus. As soon as the fire shone on him, the karma on Wang Lin's body grew even stronger. On the other hand, the black karma was thrown into the karmic fire of the red lotus, causing the fire to burn even stronger. The two sides were mutually reinforcing each other. When the karmic fire of the red lotus pounced onto the yellow spring's true water, it immediately resisted the purification of the yellow spring's true water. On the other hand, the black worm-like karma took the opportunity to bypass the yellow spring's true water and wrap around Wang Lin's soul, Yuanying, and Dharma form of heaven and earth. Wang Lin's Dharma form of heaven and earth swept his soul and Yuanying into the underworld pearl. He allowed the endless karmic fire of the red lotus and the black karma to surround the surface of the underworld pearl and slide it into the depths of the 6 paths of reincarnation. It looked like it was about to follow in Elder Bing's footsteps. The underworld pearl was sliding towards the blood-red path of Azura. At this moment, Wang Lin had already reconstructed his body in the underworld pearl. Silently, he sat in the Yellow Springs River and calmly looked at the karmic fire and karma that were invading the underworld pearl. He carefully savored the concept of the power of the 6 paths of reincarnation and the mysteries of karma. He compared them with the Taoist techniques that he had cultivated. At the same time, his mind was filled with the epiphany of Dharma that he had after reading the Buddhist scriptures and consulting Zen Master Dade. His life's experiences, karma, the cycle of life and death, the ups and downs of life, they all flowed through his mind like a river. Above Wang Lin's head, there was a silhouette of a young man. He looked about 15 or 16 years old, and it was his Yuanying. Yuanying's silhouette opened his eyes, and the light in his eyes spread out. You reap what you sow, the ancestors plant the trees, and the descendants enjoy the shade. Wang Lin's corporeal body also opened his eyes, and the light flashed. Above his Dharma form of heaven and earth was Emperor Yan's hall. Above Emperor Yan's hall, there were 3 levels of light and shadow illusions that looked like a flight of stairs. They were like pagodas. The 3 levels of light and shadow illusions were 3 worlds, and there were 3 demon gates that were connected. At this moment, the 4th demon gate suddenly opened. The world inside was empty, and there was only a dot of light. Then, a line extended from the dot of light, and it stopped at another dot of light. Then, a line continued to extend from this dot of light, and it stopped at the next dot of light. Wang Lin crushed a porcelain bottle, held the 33 Heavens Fortune Immortal pill in his hand, and sent it into his mouth. Chapter 858. Under the pressure of his family facing danger and the calamity of his sect, Wang Lin tested the 6 paths of reincarnation with his own body and comprehended the true meaning of the Grand Tao. He felt the fog in front of him gradually dissipate, leaving only the last wisp. Wang Lin's mind was calm and he was not anxious. To break through this Tao, there is only one word: defy. The 4th demonic gate closed with a bang. All the scenes in the 4th world started to reverse. The light that continued retreated from the final destination to the previous starting point, then back to the previous starting point, and so on until it returned to the starting point. Walking in the world, when one makes a choice, one walks on a path and reaches an end. The starting point is the cause, and the end point is the effect. There is a cause, and there is an effect. Once something starts, it will continue on its path, and when it stops, there will be a result. The past created the future, and the result of the future could be traced back to the cause of the past. The last art of Wang Lin's 4 symbols realm art, the karma realm. After coming into contact with this principle, the last wisp of fog in front of Wang Lin completely dissipated. The gate of the primordial spirit in his sea of consciousness had never been clearer. Scenes flashed through Wang Lin's mind. They were distant yet clear. When he was young, his talent was not outstanding and he could not pass the entrance exam of the Hangyu sect. He obtained the underworld pearl and became a disciple of his master, Lin Feng. He had always cultivated the slowest among his fellow disciples. Fortunately, his master never abandoned him and patiently guided him. He collected a lot of resources and finally managed to soar into the sky. When he reached core formation, he returned to his hometown and lived a simple life, enjoying the happiness of his family with his parents. When the cultivators of the underworld hall attacked, he fought to the death to protect his family. He was trapped in the void battlefield and survived for 100 years. After suffering came happiness. He became the first disciple of his master to reach nascent soul and shock the world. Everything turned into three thoughts: family, master, fellow disciples. In the end, these three thoughts converged into the purest thought and let out a deafening cry. Primordial Spirit. Primordial Spirit. Primordial Spirit. The powerful will that was condensed to the extreme and finally sublimated pushed Wang Lin toward the gate of the primordial spirit. He had to prove his Tao and become an essence soul, protect his family, protect the glory of his sect, and protect his fellow disciples. This was a belief that he had never said aloud. It was the hottest temperature and the brightest flame in his cold and lonely heart. Just like his past life, it had always wandered between black and white and colorful, silent, despairing, pessimistic, but there was always hope. When the path to immortality was hopeless and his future was bleak, he met his benefactor. When cultivation was slow and every step was difficult, there was a master who did not abandon him. There were people from the same sect who treated him as equals. They did not look down on him or pity him. They went through thick and thin together. A strong enemy was attacking, and his clansmen and parents were in danger. He fought with his life on the line. Although he was trapped in the void, most of his relatives were still safe. He stood firm in every blow, rose high in every challenge, and was reborn in every devastation. Those with a strong heart would not cry, beg for mercy, compromise, or give up. They would turn the impossible into the possible, turn the rotten into the magical, and stand tall forever. In order to prevent the world in his heart from turning black and white, even if he sank into the darkness, even if he burned alone in the darkness, he was willing to endure it. Wang Lin felt like his entire body was aflame in the darkness, burning fiercely. It seemed like only a moment had passed, but it also seemed like a long time had passed. The door in front of him suddenly opened. His yuanying turned into a stream of light and rushed into the Dharma form. The huge Dharma form completely merged with yuanying and rushed into the open door together. After passing through the void door, Wang Lin's Dharma form suddenly collapsed, turning into talisman seeds. They received the endless great Tao laws of heaven and earth to nourish and purify them. They grew rapidly and then suddenly turned into a huge Tai Chi diagram that covered the sky. On this Tai Chi diagram, there were layers of light and shadows flashing. At the end of the black and yellow road, a dark river flowed silently. Above the river, there was an ancient black stone bridge. On the other side of the black stone bridge, there was a hall that was as large as a city. In that vast, pitch-black hall, there seemed to be something else. But at this moment, it was only an illusory shadow, flashing and disappearing. The layers of light and shadows turned into a huge netherworld, and the huge Tai Chi diagram contained this side of the world. A low and calm song sounded from the netherworld Tai Chi diagram. In the Xian Men, the inverse immortal spirit, the Tao uses killing to prove love. When the world is in trouble, it is like a spring. Beyond redemption, I walk alone. In the song, the netherworld Tai Chi diagram turned, sweeping up the road to the underworld, the river of forgetfulness, the bridge of helplessness, and Emperor Yan's hall. It rushed out of the underworld pearl, sweeping up the underworld pearl and the Xiantian god's sealing banner. In the next moment, the netherworld Tai Chi diagram transformed back into Wang Lin's appearance. His white hair floated, and the Tai Chi diagram on his forehead flashed. The fourth door above his head opened, revealing the mystique of the world of karma. The door opened for an instant, and then it closed with a bang. The karma that was like thousands of twisted and hideous black worms that were wrapping around him suddenly jumped in unison and began to shatter inch by inch. It was not that Wang Lin had completely cleared his own karma, but that he now understood the principle of karma, and would not easily trigger his own karma for the outside world. At the same time, the surging yellow spring's true water turned into a long river, isolating the karma red lotuses. The red lotuses bloomed on the yellow river, and the two sides reached a miraculous balance. The reincarnation sect's power of samsara is unique. In the future, when I cultivate the Tao, I can use it as a reference. Wang Lin's expression was calm. With a light tap of his foot, he had already jumped out of the 6 paths of samsara. The third direct disciple of the Celestial Gates sect master, Lin Feng, was Wang Lin. Even Jia Luo Shi, Xiao Dongtian and the others at the side, when they saw this scene and then looked at Xiao Yan and Shi Tianhao, their hearts sank. Is it because we attacked the mountain today, the pressure instead pushed them to break through the bottleneck, or is there another reason? Shi Tianfang used the 6 paths of samsara to devour Wang Lin and Elder Ice. Seeing that Elder Ice was successfully devoured by the power of samsara, a low Dao song sounded, and in the next moment, Wang Lin had already escaped from the 6 paths of samsara. Wang Lin's expression was cold and emotionless. He looked at Shi Tianfang and paused for a moment. The huge bridge of helplessness suddenly appeared, lifted him up, and rushed towards Shi Tianfang. Shi Tianfang was slightly startled, and he frowned. He pointed a finger at Wang Lin, and with his arcane energy, all things were born. The stubborn stone nodded, and the heaven and earth opened and closed. But after the creation, came the destruction. This was the secret skill of the reincarnation sect, the great nirvana finger. The bridge of helplessness under Wang Lin's feet rose up, and the yellow spring true water surged from the river of forgetfulness and poured into the bridge of helplessness. The ancient and desolate air on the black stone bridge became even heavier, and a powerful intent realm that could shock even the gods and ghosts alike appeared. The huge bridge passed through the endless void, turned into a black line, and clashed with Shi Tianfang's finger. In the midst of the explosion, the bridge of helplessness carried Wang Lin backward, and Shi Tianfang was also pushed back by the impact. The seriousness in Shi Tianfang's eyes became more and more intense. He stared at Wang Lin and thought, sure enough, his Taoist techniques and my reincarnation sect's inheritance are similar. They seem to be on the same path, but at the same time, they have the effect of restraining my reincarnation sect's inheritance. The same kind of intent realm could not be cultivated by just one Tao art. Xianmen Tianzong's Great Sun Brilliant Heaven Scripture and the Demon Realm's Golden Crow Clan's True Sun Fire art could both be cultivated and controlled the True Sun Fire. Different Tao arts had different understandings of the same kind of intent realm. Naturally, there would be some differences. However, the great Taoists came from the same source. When Shi Tianfang saw Xiao Yan and Shi Tianhao's performance, he was shocked. He didn't expect Lin Feng's direct disciples to have such powerful magical powers. Their nascent divinities could even fight against Tao-fusing experts like Shi Tianfang and Xiao Dongtian. Now that he saw Wang Lin again, he immediately knew that although Wang Lin's nascent divinity had just formed, he was still a formidable opponent. Arcane energy surged around Shi Tianfang's body as he once again manifested the 6 paths reincarnation Tao fruit. Among the 6 grids on the wheel, the one that represented the Tao of mortal shone brightly, and the carvings on it kept changing, showing the changes of the mortal world. Balls of colorful light spread out, trying to engulf Wang Lin. Shi Tianfang was experienced in fights of magical powers. When he saw Wang Lin's Tao art, he knew that the Tao arts of Celestial Tao and Azura Tao were useless against him. The Hungry Ghost Tao and Hell Tao were even more useless. But the Mortal Tao and Animal Tao were worth a try. The colorful light spread out, as if it had turned into the mortal world, enveloping Wang Lin. The scene that appeared in front of him was the small mountain village where he lived when he was young. Although it was barren, it still had some farmlands. Wang Lin's eyes were calm and peaceful. Standing on the bridge of helplessness, he looked like an ordinary mortal. The magical power and aura around him were completely restrained. Walking in the mortal world, he returned to his natural state, perfectly merging with the mortal world. He lingered but didn't lose himself, and his eyes were always clear. Seeing this, Shi Tianfang frowned. He immediately knew that the mortal world Tao was useless against Wang Lin. The 6 paths of reincarnation Tao fruit revolved, the purple grid representing the animal Tao lit up, wanting to suck Wang Lin inside. All kinds of demonic beasts and beasts filled the world, pouncing at Wang Lin again. Wang Lin was still walking slowly, his expression and temperament didn't change at all. He still looked like an ordinary mortal. But around him, the deathly stillness and death chi had already spread out, corroding the surrounding space and turning it into the Yellow Springs world. The dusky Yellow Springs world spread out and soon came into contact with the animal Dao world created by Shi Tianfang. All kinds of demonic beasts that were trapped in the Yellow Springs world turned into white bones, leaving only their skeletons. They had lost their lives. Half of the animal Dao world was devoured by the Yellow Springs world. For a moment, the world was divided into two, one was the animal Dao world and the other was the Yellow Springs underworld. In the past, when Wang Lin used the Yellow Springs Annihilation Realm, he would become cold and murderous, breaking away from his usual calm and peaceful appearance. But now, when Wang Lin used the Yellow Springs Annihilation Realm, his temperament didn't change at all. He slowly walked out from the Yellow Springs underworld. He didn't look scary or majestic, instead, he looked like a sightseeing tourist. But the more he looked like this, the more he looked like the owner of this world, like the Lord of Hell who controlled the cycle of life and death. His aura made Shi Tianfang frown. The 6 paths of reincarnation continued to spin, the strange and mysterious power of reincarnation passed through the Yellow Springs Annihilation Realm and Wang Lin's arcane energy, trying to draw out the karma in his body. Wang Lin's expression was calm, he changed his form and turned into the netherworld Tai Chi art, casting the karma world. After the 4th demon gate was opened, it suddenly closed. Karma reversed, causing his karma to be unaffected by Shi Tianfang's 6 paths of reincarnation. At the same time, the Yellow Springs world manifested by Wang Lin's power of nirvanic destruction suddenly trembled, then it rapidly collapsed and shrunk towards the center. It was like the death of the stars, the mass of everything collapsed towards the center and was destroyed. The hellish Yellow Spring scene disappeared, condensing into a small black ball, silently hovering above the netherworld Tai Chi art. Chapter 859. Although the netherworld realm had disappeared, the black ball exuded a terrifying aura of nirvanic destruction. The pinnacle of the netherworld realm, unparalleled destruction. This was Wang Lin pushing the power of his Yellow Springs death realm to the limit. In an instant, he burned everything, gathered all his power, and released it all at once. At this moment, he used all his power to form the terrifying power of nirvanic extermination. On the Hades Taiji diagram, there was a city-like, majestic black palace. It was Emperor Yan's hall. The small black ball merged with Emperor Yan's hall, and the aura of Emperor Yan's hall suddenly became even more gloomy and heavy. Its color also became darker, without a hint of luster. The space around Emperor Yan's hall twisted, as though it was about to be sucked into the black palace. The gates to the ancient and modern world opened, and Emperor Yan's hall fell into it. The gates closed, and the next moment, the gates opened again. Emperor Yan's hall was already before Shi Tianfang, without any delay. It had truly arrived in an instant. Feeling the power of unparalleled destruction, Shi Tianfang took a deep breath and clasped his palms together, activating all his spiritual power. The 6 paths of reincarnation Dao fruit shook violently, as though it was about to shatter. Pillars of black smoke rose into the sky, crisscrossing in the world of the 6 paths of reincarnation. Each pillar of black smoke seemed to add a tear to the world. The 6 paths of reincarnation seemed to be on the verge of collapse. In the immortal realm, those who were originally high and mighty, became filthy, their hair withered, and their bodies stinking. In the human realm, thousands of living beings cried and wailed, as though they were facing the end of the world. In the Azura realm, the figures fighting each other became even crazier, more bloodthirsty, and more savage. In the beast realm, the snakes, insects, rats, and ants stirred. Many strange beasts howled, and it was also a scene of the end of the world. In the hungry ghost realm, the billions of ghosts became even more vicious, their faces twisted in pain. Their venomous auras made one feel suffocated and cold. In the hell realm, magma flowed everywhere, but there was a sense of joy, as though they were happy to see the destruction. The black cracks grew denser and denser, causing the 6 paths of reincarnation world to finally shatter completely. A powerful force that could destroy the heavens and earth spread in all directions. It was like the true end of the world. This destructive power met with Wang Lin's equally terrifying Emperor Yan's Hall. The two collided and interfered with the real world, causing the void to distort. Even the yin and yang life and death design was affected. At the same time that the destructive power held back Emperor Yan's Hall, 6 more auras were born from the destruction. They circled around, as though they were building a new world of the 6 paths of reincarnation. After the destruction, the new power was even more majestic. The supreme Dharma spell of the reincarnation sect, the destruction of the 6 paths and the reconstruction of reincarnation. Emperor Yan's Hall, which had been reinforced by the unparalleled destructive power, also exploded with tremendous power. It directly blew up the 6 Daos reincarnation realm that was about to be born. But Emperor Yan's Hall also began to crumble and dissipate into the void. But soon after, white light surged on the Taiji diagram formed by Wang Lin's soul. Almost in an instant, the black nirvana chi that Wang Lin had exhausted with all his might appeared again, turning into the dark void of the netherworld world. Then, the void collapsed and condensed into a terrifying black sphere. The extreme of the Yellow Springs Death Realm, reversal, extreme Dao rebirth. Shi Tianfang frowned as he watched the scene unfold before him. In theory, when a cultivator reached the primordial spirit realm, they would be one with the heavens and the earth. All the yuan qi of heaven and earth could be converted into their own spiritual power. Therefore, primordial spirit realm cultivators would not face the problem of spiritual power exhaustion, unless an even stronger cultivator used a powerful mystique to temporarily cut off the connection between the primordial spirit realm cultivator and the world. But for primordial spirit realm cultivators, due to the difference in their cultivation of Tao techniques, mystiques, and spiritual power, the efficiency and frequency of conversion of the yuan qi of heaven and earth would definitely be different. It was like 2 containers with almost endless capacity, opening a hole to pour water. The size of the hole would directly affect how much water could be poured out in the same amount of time. Similarly, in a certain space, when the water that originally belonged to that part of the space was poured out, water from other places would naturally be replenished, but the speed of replenishment might not necessarily be able to keep up with the speed of pouring. Even after Wang Lin reached the primordial spirit realm, he pushed the power of his Yellow Springs Death Realm to the extreme and performed the supreme art of destruction, but he still mobilized the greatest power in his body in an instant. This kind of spiritual power was strong, but the speed of spiritual power consumption was equally shocking. Even if Wang Lin could convert the yuan qi of heaven and earth into his own spiritual power, the speed of consumption still exceeded the speed of replenishment. It was not that the replenishment speed was too slow. After Wang Lin reached the primordial spirit realm, he could communicate with the heavens and the earth, and the majestic yuan qi would all be converted into his own spiritual power. It was just that the speed of consumption was too fast. Especially according to Shi Tianfang's observation, Wang Lin's supreme art of destruction vaguely had some traces of the Tao destruction technique. Before he reached the primordial spirit realm, performing this technique not only required him to burn up all his power, but even his spirit would be damaged in order to have such powerful destructive power. And after he reached the primordial spirit realm, performing this technique would also faintly damage his own primordial spirit incarnation. Once a cultivator's primordial spirit incarnation was damaged, it would also cause the primordial spirit's integration with the heavens and the earth to no longer be perfect. At this time, it would be impossible to mobilize the yuan qi of heaven and earth to repair the body. The most obvious example in this regard was Wang Lin's senior brother, Xiao Yan, who reached the primordial spirit realm one step ahead of him. Several of Xiao Yan's spiritual powers consumed a lot of spiritual power. After he reached the primordial spirit realm, this shortcoming was obviously improved, and the 4-color fiery lotus was at his fingertips. But not to mention that he had not completely mastered the 5-color fiery lotus. Even if he had perfected it, he could only attack once in the primordial spirit incarnation realm. This was because the 5-color fiery lotus was extremely powerful. While it looked down on the enemy, it would also damage his own primordial spirit, causing a gap in the integration of the heavens and the earth to be unable to effectively mobilize the yuan qi of heaven and earth to replenish his spiritual power. Therefore, Shi Tianfang originally thought that as long as he blocked this fatal blow from Wang Lin, he could slowly deal with him later. Unexpectedly, Wang Lin used the power of extreme rebirth, not only to repair the damage to his primordial spirit, but also to restore his power to its peak in an unimaginably short time. Shi Tianfang waved his hand, and the red lotus hellfire flew towards Wang Lin, but a dark yellow pearl rose above Wang Lin's head. The dark yellow light was like a long river, flowing in the void, isolating the red lotuses formed by the hellfire, making them unable to get close to Wang Lin. Shi Tianfang frowned. It really is the underworld pearl of the underworld demon sect. The underworld pearl, once the ultimate treasure of the super demon sect underworld demon sect, had been damaged for tens of thousands of years. At this moment, it was finally repaired, giving birth to the treasure's primordial spirit, and glowing again. Although it was still a distance away from its peak, there was still hope for it. At this moment, it was even more extraordinary. Looking at the sky above the Hades Taiji diagram formed by Wang Lin's primordial spirit, the shadow of Emperor Yan's hall and the small black ball merged again, emitting an incomparably ferocious aura. Shi Tianfang frowned and growled, 6 Daos. The 6 Daos wheel, which was locked in a stalemate with the All Heavens Hall's defensive seals, heard this, and the face in the center of the wheel turned gloomy. The personal disciple of the master of Xian Men is indeed extraordinary. The 6 Daos wheel suddenly spun, and suddenly abandoned the All Heavens Hall's defensive seals, no longer attacking. Instead, it flew into the air and spun continuously, turning into a black hole. The black hole met with Wang Lin's Emperor Yan's hall, which was strengthened by the art of destruction. The collision between the two was even more intense than the previous battle between Shi Tianfang and Wang Lin. The black hole and Emperor Yan's hall shattered at the same time. The strange power of reincarnation and the terrifying aura of nirvanic extermination swept across the battlefield, forcing the others who were fighting to retreat. A reincarnation sex-hungry ghost realm cultivator retreated a little too slowly, and half of his body was swept away by the aura of nirvanic extermination. Fortunately, he used the ghost substitution art and used the ghost he had refined to die in his place at the critical moment. That was how he managed to escape with his life. He looked at the battlefield with lingering fear. Apart from Xianli, Xiao Yan, Shi Tianhao, Jia Luoshi, Xiao Dongtian, Xian Tianin, and Shi Tianfang, the others retreated when they saw his terrible condition. Even the heavily injured twin poles Sky Peak, Zhang Enrui, Luo Qinggu, and Wu Tong had to be careful. The black hole shattered, and the 6 Daos wheel was revealed again. On the other side, the Hades Taiji diagram formed by Wang Lin's primordial spirit flashed with white light again. The damage and spiritual power that his primordial spirit had suffered were instantly recovered. At the same time, the Supreme Destruction Art was cast for the 3rd time, and the black ball was formed again. The human face in the center of the 6 Daos wheel looked extremely serious. Although there must be a limit, and it can't be an infinite cycle, it's really troublesome to do it again and again. The wheel spun faster and faster, and it tightly wrapped around Wang Lin, preventing Wang Lin from attacking Shi Tianfang. At this moment, Shi Tianfang did not join forces with the 6 Daos wheel to attack Wang Lin. Instead, he descended toward Yujing Mountain. Just now, when he and Wang Lin were fighting with all their might, he vaguely felt as if someone was secretly watching them from the shadows. This feeling made him very uncomfortable, so he immediately decided to take down Yujing Mountain first to avoid any trouble. The All Heavens Great Palace's defensive seals protected Yujing Mountain. Shi Tianfang's eyes were calm, and he waved his hand and threw out a talisman. The talisman emitted a strong light, and in the light, a haggard old man with a tall hat and ancient clothes appeared. His expression was solemn and cold, and in his eyes, there were 2 6 Daos wheel worlds that kept spinning. The Taoist opened his hands, and like a reincarnated black hole, he twisted the light film formed by the All Heavens Great Palace's defensive seals. This person was the Reincarnation Taoist, the founder of the Reincarnation sect, a powerful expert who had achieved Tao since ancient times. This talisman was left behind by the Reincarnation Taoist, and it could actually manifest his powerful spiritual power in a short period of time. Under the reincarnation Taoists' twisting, the light film did not break, but a small crack was torn. The crack only existed for a moment before it closed again. But in this moment, Shi Tianfang had already taken the opportunity to pass through the light film and land on Yujing Mountain. Shi Tianfang stepped on the peak of Yujing Mountain, and when he felt the solid ground beneath his feet, his usually calm mind became a little excited. Finally. Chapter 860. Seeing Shi Tianfang step onto the peak of Yujing Mountain, Li Yuanfang, who was sitting on the mysterious sky treasure tree, frowned. He held a jade talisman in his hand and was about to crush it. This was Zhu Yi's last resort before he went into seclusion. If Li Yuanfang crushed the jade talisman, he would come out of seclusion in advance. Shi Tianfang looked up at Li Yuanfang. With just a glance, Li Yuanfang felt that his thoughts seemed to stop, and his soul and body were about to be separated. Fortunately, Li Yuanfang's mind and will were completely in sync with the yin and yang life and death formation. As the formation changed, it helped him resolve Shi Tianfang's divine sense. Otherwise, if Shi Tianfang, who was in the Tao integration realm, wanted to kill him, who had not formed his nascent soul, he would die with just a glance. He didn't even need to look. Without the protection of the yin and yang life and death formation, a living person would immediately become a dead person. However, when Li Yuanfang was directly attacked by Shi Tianfang, the yin and yang life and death formation became even more sluggish. Shi Tianfang glanced at Li Yuanfang. After failing to kill him immediately, he estimated how long it would take to completely break the yin and yang life and death formation. He shook his head slightly and retracted his gaze, preparing to refine Yujing Mountain first. At this moment, in the distant sky of the Kunlun mountain range, an extremely fast-flowing light broke through the layers of void and arrived outside the yin and yang life and death formation in an instant. It was a light shadow. The shape of a long sword didn't have a physical body. It was just an outline outlined by light, which revealed an elusive, erratic, and powerful concept of power. It was like a fleeting flowing light. It was so short that it flashed by in a hurry. It was difficult to grasp and capture. Inside the long sword, countless scenes changed. In the blink of an eye, it changed 60 times. It turned out to be flowing light swordsman of the Celeritas sword sect, who directly manifested his Dharma form of void return. Flowing light swordsman came outside the formation without any obstruction. Li Yuanfang directly opened the formation and let him in, not worried at all that he would lead a wolf into the house. Indeed, swordsman Lightflow didn't have any ill intentions. He traveled through the endless void and rushed to the front lines. After he entered the formation, he faced off against the East Heaven Gate's great elder, Tao Lord Dongming, who was fighting with the sky peak of the twin poles. The two poles' celestial peaks immediately left the formation and landed on Shi Tianfang, who was on Jade Capital Mountain. Shi Tianfang glanced at venerated swordsman Lightstream. I can't believe they still let one go. Jia Luoshi, who was fighting with Xianli, was expressionless. His eyes flashed with a cold light as he stared at Shi Tianhao. Originally, it should have been Sword Venerate Shaozi who went to stop Sword Venerate Streamlight. But unexpectedly, Sword Venerate Shaozi was severely injured by Shi Tianhao. Xiao Yan took a deep breath and looked at Sword Venerate Flowing Light. Senior, I thank you for your timely help. After exchanging a blow with Tao Lord Dongming, Sword Venerate Flowing Light's voice came out. I owe you a lot in the past. If your sect needs it, I should help. You don't have to thank me. Instead, I want to congratulate you for reaching the Essence Soul Realm. The immortal divine light of the heavenly way rose above Shi Tianfang's head and withstood the attack of the twin poles' celestial peaks. His expression didn't change at all. If the longevity heavenly spear or the 9 thunder drum were here, they might be able to play a role. But you, flowing light, are of no help here. Although there is a fish that escaped the net, this is the only one. You don't have to think about other reinforcements. At this moment, on the way from the Purple Cloud Peak of the Thunder Mountain Range to Kunlun Mountain of the Purple Cloud Path, two thunderbolts flew through the void and suddenly stopped in the void. The thunderbolts stopped and two figures appeared. One was the current sect master of the Purple Cloud Path, Tao Master Thundercloud, and the other was Tao Master Blue Thunder. At this moment, Tao Master Blue Thunder had finally broken through and reached the Void Return Realm. However, at this moment, the two brothers' faces were gloomy. They looked at the countless flowing lights in the void in front of them, forming a huge magic array, changing time and space and covering this part of the world. On the distant horizon, there were faint roars of violent beasts that pierced through the clouds. More than one of them revealed the powerful aura of the demon clan's immortal monster soul realm. In the air, two figures were faintly discernible. One was an ordinary-looking old man with a medium build, like an old man from the countryside. The other was hidden in a black robe and his appearance couldn't be seen clearly. But Tao Master Thundercloud and Tao Master Blue Thunder immediately recognized them and frowned even more. Wu Shusen, the sect master of the Animal Path of the Reincarnation Sect, and Dark Lord, the sect master of the Hell Path. Dark Lord didn't say anything, but Wu Shusen smiled slightly. If the 9 Thunder Drum doesn't come out, you two can forget about passing through here. In fact, even if the 9 Thunder Drum wants to surpass me and Dark Lord, it's not something that can be done in a short period of time. Let's go all out. Of course, the two of us are no match for the 9 Thunder Drum, but we don't intend to fight to the death with you. We just want to delay you here for a while. It won't be long before our sect master will naturally solve the problem. It just so happens that Dark Lord and I are good at delaying others. Tao Master Thundercloud, you can ask the 9 Thunder Drum to support us. At worst, I'll send all the spirit beasts I've raised over the years to it to test its power. At the same time, in the Beijiang, on the vast grassland, two people stood alone. They faced the south where Kunlun Mountain was located, obviously preparing to leave. Of these two people, one was a tall and thin old man who looked very old and weak. The other was a young man in a black robe, carrying a huge black iron spear on his back. His powerful spiritual power fluctuations were even more terrifying than the tall and thin old man beside him. The old man was the high priest of the Northern Militant Royal Court, a powerhouse of the Void Return Realm who specialized in soul techniques. After the Northern Militant Royal Court learned of the changes in Xianmen Tianzong and Yujing Mountain being besieged, the great Chanyu of the Northern Militant Royal Court, the High Priest, and the others made the decision to help after a short discussion. But at this moment, they had no choice but to stop in their tracks. On the seemingly calm grassland in front of them, there were two people standing in front of them. The person on the left was tall and burly, with a threatening spirit. Standing there, he was like a giant sword that was about to break the world, extremely domineering and fierce. The person on the right was dressed in linen clothes, barefooted, and there was not a trace of sword intent or spiritual power around him. He stood there ordinary, like a mortal in the secular world. The master of the 6 meridian swords of Shu Mountain, Sword Master Little Shang and Sword Master Li Xiong. The black-robed young man beside the high priest was expressionless. With just the two of you in the Void Return Realm, you want to stop me? As he said this, the black iron spear on his back was already in his hand. A violent and grand power spread out, stirring up the world around him and beginning to shatter. The Longevity Heavenly Spear was the treasure of the Northern Militant Royal Court, a Mahayana-grade magic treasure. In reality, it was the #1 powerhouse of the Northern Militant Royal Court, but it had always been in the king's tent and did not go out easily. This time, considering that there were many powerhouses in the Xian Extermination Coalition army, the great Chanyu of the Northern Militant Royal Court specially invited the Longevity Heavenly Spear and the High Priest to help Yujing Mountain, while he himself, who was in the Void Return Realm, stayed in the king's tent. This black-robed young man was naturally the Longevity Heavenly Spear's magic treasure. Sword Master Little Shang smiled. I thought that only the great Chanyu and the High Priest would come out, but I didn't expect the Northern Militant Royal Court to be so honest, even sending out the Longevity Heavenly Spear. Longevity Heavenly Spear, you are a Mahayana-grade magic treasure, which is indeed extraordinary, but we now have the Little Shang and Li Xiong swords in our hands. Other Void Return Realm cultivators are afraid of you, but we, the sword cultivators of Shu Mountain, are not. The Little Shang sword and Li Xiong sword can basically be said to be the two sword skills with the strongest pure attack power among the 6 meridian swords of Shu Mountain. Sword Master Little Shang said, "Is your northern militant royal court willing to fight to the death with my Shu Mountain in order to help Xianmen Tianzong?" Sword Master Li Xiong looked at the Longevity Heavenly Spear, his expression calm and indifferent as he said, "This time Xianmen Tianzong will definitely pay the price for their previous insolence. I advise the two of you to return now, otherwise if we fight, the final result will not look good on everyone's face." In the main hall of the Southern Wilderness Sword Sect, Sword Master of the Great Wilderness stood with his hands behind his back, his expression serious as he looked at the distant horizon outside the mountain. Within the crimson-red burning clouds, there was a faint flash of sword light. "De Huang, these years you have been too close to Xianmen Tianzong. Now obediently stay here and don't move, after this maybe Shu Mountain will still be able to tolerate you." The one who came here to block the door was the Sect Master of the Blaze Sword Sect, Sword Master of the Blaze. At the same time, outside the Thunderbolt Sword Sect, in the sky above the Thunderbolt Sword Sect, there was actually an ocean hanging upside down. It was vast and boundless, enveloping the earth. The seawater did not fall, but waves splashed everywhere, the tides rising and falling. The Sect Master of the Tsunghai Sword Sect, Sword Master of the Vast Sea, had an indifferent expression. He stepped on the surface of the sea, as if he was standing upside down in the air, but he was happy and content. He looked at the Thunderbolt Sword Sect below, blocking the Sword Master of the Thunderbolt at the sect gate. Sword Master of the Vast Sea smiled and said, "Thunderbolt, it's not the first time we've fought, neither of us can do anything to the other. Let's not waste our energy, it's not like we need to fight to the death for Xianmen Tianzong. Let's just wait here for the dust to settle." Emperor Zhou's side has also already sent troops to the Qin dynasty, suppressing Emperor Qin Stonefeather to the point where he can't move. At this moment, on the border of the Great Zhou dynasty and the Great Qin dynasty, there was a large number of experts facing off. On the side of the Great Zhou dynasty, there were two vast auras that were like real worlds of creation. On the side of the Great Qin dynasty, there was a boundless radiance with no end in sight, standing at the border like a city wall. Emperor Qin Stonefeather, the Great Qin monarch Rosenshir Zongmao, and the Southern Bright monarch Shir Zongtong, the three Dao integration experts, stood on the immortal dragon city together, looking across with solemn expressions. They knew that Emperor Zhou Liangpan and Zhu Hongwu's intention was to keep them from assisting the Kunlun Mountains Xianmen Tianzong. However, if they really had the opportunity to set foot on the Great Qin dynasty's territory, Liangpan and Zhu Hongwu would definitely be more than happy to do so. The Southern Bright monarch Shir Zongtong looked at Stonefeather. "Your Majesty, why don't we just pull back and help Xianmen Tianzong overcome this crisis first? In the future, we'll deal with the Great Zhou dynasty together with Xianmen Tianzong. No matter how much they swallow today, they'll spit it out in the future." The Rosen monarch Shir Zongmao shook his head and said, "Our relationship with Xianmen Tianzong is that of an ally, not a sect leader and a vassal state. How can we abandon our territory for others? After all, we've already held back the Great Zhou dynasty's two creation-grade magic treasures here. We're even stronger than the forces that are actually attacking the mountain." Emperor Qin Stonefeather didn't say anything. His gaze was as calm as still water. His gaze pierced through the void and landed on the Grand Imperial Palace, meeting Emperor Zhou Liangpan's gaze. Liangpan's expression was also calm. He tilted his head slightly and asked, "How is Minister Xiao's family doing?" A primordial soul cultivator beside him answered, "Sect Master Xiao is still biding his time and waiting for an opportunity. Xianmen Tianzong's Xiao Yan, Shi Tianhao, and Wang Lin all reached the primordial soul realm one after another. This is somewhat unexpected, and he doesn't have enough confidence. Thus, he can only observe for now. However, the reincarnation sect's Shi Tianfang has the upper hand." Chapter 861. From Xiao Dongtian's point of view, Shi Tianfang, who had the upper hand, was not having an easy time either. He was the first to ascend Yujing Mountain, which made him the target of everyone. Other than the twin sky peaks, Xianli, Xiaoyan, and Shi Tianhao were all hurriedly pushing back their opponents and slashing down with their swords, thunder, and fire. Even Jia Luoshi, Xiao Dongtian, and Xian Tianyin, who were fighting with them, slowed down and allowed Xianmen Tianzong and the others to intercept Shi Tianfang. Apart from the 6 paths of reincarnation sect and the reincarnation sect cultivators who were focused on holding back Wang Lin and the others, Jia Luoshi and Xiao Dongtian were also unwilling to let Shi Tianfang get ahead of them. At the same time, Yang Qing changed the All-Heaven Great Palace's defensive seals again to drive Shi Tianfang out. A cold light flashed in Shi Tianfang's eyes. He cast out another talisman, which manifested Daoist Reincarnation's supreme power. Daoist Reincarnation's figure emerged in the light and blocked all the attacks from the twin sky peaks and Shi Tianfang. But at this moment, a crack appeared in the sky outside Yujing Mountain, and gray fog gushed out from it. Several figures wrapped in gray fog rushed into the yin and yang life and death array. Li Yuanfang was slightly shocked. His mind was connected to the array, and he immediately found that the opponents were very strong. The person in the lead was a tall middle-aged man with a beard on his chin. His eyes were bright and full of expression, but if one looked closely, one would discover that the depths of his eyes were pitch black like an abyss. He was the master of the Nether Palace, Su Anda. But what caught everyone's attention even more was that in Su Anda's palm was an open scroll. The scroll was emitting a resplendent brilliance, and within the brilliance, there were layers of black shadows flashing, as if it contained many independent worlds. Every single independent world contained a profound concept of power. Many independent worlds overlapped with each other, but they didn't fuse together. Instead, they formed a wondrous resonance, causing the resplendent power to become even more shocking. The scroll clearly contained the aura of the creation realm, similar to the creation realm magic treasures like the immortal dragon city and the grand imperial palace. But it was still not perfect. The Book of Life and Death was only half a step away from attaining the creation realm, as if it could break through the final bottleneck at any time. It was originally a magic treasure refined by the ancient underworld emperor in the past. He wanted to use the Book of Life and Death to dominate the world of life and death and determine the fate of all living beings in the world. However, the underworld emperor was deposed and overthrown before this treasure was completely refined. The Book of Life and Death was also greatly damaged in the great battle back then. Otherwise, it would have become the creation long ago. Otherwise, it would have been of the creation realm. Otherwise, it would have been creation realm. Su Anda sighed. He held the Book of Life and Death in one hand and flipped the mysterious scroll with the other. The dazzling brilliance on the scroll suddenly turned into a huge beam of light and shot out. However, his target was not Xianmen Tianzong or Yujing Mountain, but 6 Paths Luan, who was fighting with Wang Lin. As soon as the Book of Life and Death appeared, 6 Paths Will felt a wave of discomfort. If it were any other time, he would still be able to dodge it, but right now, he was engaged in a battle with Wang Lin. The sudden sneak attack from the Book of Life and Death caused him to be enveloped by the huge light pillar. The man in the center of the wheel was shocked and terrified. Because he clearly felt that he was being assimilated by that resplendent pillar of light. Although there were many differences, they seemed to originate from the same source. An even more powerful force was continuously pulling it toward the Book of Life and Death. The 6 Paths Will let out a shrill whistle and spun at an unprecedented speed. His strength was pushed to the extreme, turning into a black hole of the 6 Paths reincarnation, resisting the suction force from the Book of Life and Death and trying to escape from the tiger's mouth. But the Book of Life and Death's power was already stronger than his, and Su Anda's hands moved quickly, casting out a black ray that merged with the light pillar emitted by the Book of Life and Death, suppressing and refining the struggling 6 Paths wheel. The sudden change caused Xiaoyan, Shi Tianhao, Wang Lin, Jia Luoshi and the others to be extremely shocked as they looked at the strange scene in front of them. On the Yujing mountain, Shi Tianfang's eyes almost popped out of their sockets as he stared at Su Anda, who suddenly attacked Six Paths Will as if he had turned into Xianmen Tianzong's helper. Su Anda smiled and said, "Don't misunderstand, I am also very interested in Xianmen Tianzong's treasures, but in order to obtain them, one must be strong enough. What I am doing now is increasing my strength." Shi Tianfang looked at the Book of Life and Death in shock. He felt the power contained in it and his eyes were filled with realization. So it's true. Su Anda used his arcane energy to transmit his voice to him. "Do you understand now? According to seniority, you should call me Great Grand Marshal Uncle Zeng, although I haven't really met my eldest senior brother a few times." Shi Tianfang took a deep breath. Although he had some doubts before, it was not until today that he was sure that the founder of the reincarnation sect, Taoist reincarnation, was the same as Su Anda, the hall master of the underworld. They were both the inheritors of the ancient king of the underworld. However, when Taoist reincarnation and Su Anda practiced the king of the underworld, they also constantly added their own understanding to improve and change the Six Paths Wheel. Su Anda said, "If it were other treasures, it would be fine, but eldest senior brother refined the Six Paths Will under the guidance of the king of the underworld. It was originally one of the several paths that he prepared for the Book of Life and Death, and now it's just the right place." That being said, Shi Tianfang did not have such a high resolution to offer his Six Paths Will to Su Anda to refine the Book of Life and Death. At this time, Shi Tianfang had completely realized that Su Anda had tricked him from the very beginning. His eyes suddenly turned to the yin and yang life and death array, staring at the human Tao master Zhang Enrui, who was fighting with Wu Tong and Luo Qinggu. At this time, Zhang Enrui also happened to look at him, smiled and nodded, but did not say anything. While refining the Six Paths Will with the Book of Life and Death, Su Anda cast out 3 life and death nether Tao fruits at once, which were all half black and half white. On the black side of the 3 Tao fruits, there was a figure that appeared. The first one was an old man with a long beard. His eyes were sharp and his body was surrounded by sword qi. He was like a peerless divine sword that could slash the heavens and the earth. The second one was a middle-aged Confucian scholar holding a book of poetry and reciting. Suddenly, the sound of reciting filled the void, and the power of the righteous Tao of heaven and earth spread out. The third one was a handsome man in a brocade robe. His eyes were flashing with golden flames and red and blue lights. His body was emitting a desolate and ancient aura. When they saw the third figure, Xiao Zhen, and Gu Peng in the yin and yang life and death array shuddered. King Tang. This middle-aged man in brocade robe was one of their ancestors, the younger brother of the ancient emperor. He died in the battle to dethrone the king of the underworld. After the ancient emperor ascended to the throne, he was conferred the title of King Tang. Before he died, he was also a Tao reunion Yuanshan expert. Without the Six Paths Will as his opponent, Wang Lin took a deep look at Su Anda and the Book of Life and Death. In the end, he still charged at Shi Tianfang on the Jade Jing mountain. But the 3 life and death nether Tao fruits that Su Anda cast out turned from black to white, and the 3 experts in the Tao fruits turned from illusory to real. They walked out from the Tao fruits and launched their attacks at Wang Lin and Shi Tianfang respectively. To Su Anda, in order to turn the Book of Life and Death into a creation, he also wanted the Jade Jing mountain, the white jade pillar, and the light ball in the yin-yang sea. Shi Tianfang stared at the struggling Six Paths Wheel, who was gradually being refined and devoured by the Book of Life and Death. He took a deep breath and threw out the third Taoist reincarnation's talisman. Taoist reincarnation's arcane energy manifested and blocked the attack that was coming at Shi Tianfang. Upon seeing this, Su Anda's eyes flashed slightly, and Zhang Enrui's voice sounded in his ears. "As far as I know, he really only has 2 talismans. This third one is either newly obtained, or he has been secretly hiding it for a long time." Su Anda narrowed his eyes slightly. His abyss-like eyes instantly turned pitch black, without any light. He put his palms together, and the dazzling light emitted by the Book of Life and Death turned completely black. The 6 Paths Will had the intention to perish together with Su Anda and the Book of Life and Death. He cast the Six Paths Destruction and reshaped the art of reincarnation. The power of the Six Paths Destruction and reshaped the reincarnation was even stronger than Shi Tianfang's Six Paths Reincarnation Dao fruit. Under the Six Paths Destruction and reshaped the reincarnation, the Book of Life and Death started to tremble. But now, the light beam turned black, and the Six Paths wheel struggle stopped. The black light slowly returned to the Book of Life and Death. The aura of the Book of Life and Death changed. First, it disappeared without a trace. Then, a powerful aura that controlled the cycle of life and death emerged. It was perfect and flawless, like a real world of the dead. Shi Tianfang closed his eyes and stopped looking at the Book of Life and Death and Su Anda. Instead, he concentrated on communicating with the Jade Jing mountain beneath him. As long as he could refine this celestial mountain, all the losses would be worth it. By then, he could take his revenge on Su Anda later. There was still hope for him to seek revenge on Su Anda, punish Zhang Enrui, and kill Wang Lin. As long as he could refine this Jade Jing mountain beneath him. Seeing this, Li Yuanfang was about to crush the talisman in his hand. But suddenly, he felt the mystic heaven treasure tree beneath him tremble. Not only the mystic heaven treasure tree, but also the purple qi outside the mountain and Jade Jing mountain itself. Shi Tianfang was startled. He saw that the void around Jade Jing mountain had changed. Space and time were twisting violently. One after another, invisible bands of light appeared in the void. They crisscrossed and formed a light screen that covered Jade Jing mountain. Su Anda, Jia Luoshi, and Xiao Dongtian were all shocked. Even the pages of the Book of Life and Death started to shake. The Dao integration stage cultivators were all dazed. It was as if they could see Lin Feng's face smiling at them. Jade Jing Mountain welcomes you. The invisible bands of light broke through the void and suddenly appeared around Shi Tianfang, entangling him. Shocked, Shi Tianfang tried to escape, but he found that it was useless. In the next moment, the invisible bands of light lit up at the same time. They were dazzling and then shattered. No! Shi Tianfang watched this happen, but he could do nothing to stop it. Immortal heavenly divine light. Shatter. Six Paths of Reincarnation Dao Fruit. Shatter. The fourth talisman of the reincarnation Taoist. It was torn apart. The great curse of 9 deaths. It was useless. The explosive increase in power was instantly used up. This was the secret technique of the reincarnation sect, the reincarnation art of rebirth. He could not use it. His primordial spirit was completely sealed. His connection with the resurrection treasure he had left in the depths of the sect had been severed. He had used all his techniques, but they were all useless. Shi Tianfang could only watch as he was shattered along with the invisible bands of light. He was destroyed, turned into nothingness, and disappeared from this world. A primordial spirit Dao integration stage cultivator had been completely obliterated. Chapter 862. In the Spirit Sea, at the border between the Sea of Light and the Spirit Sea world, in the Ball of Light, Lin Feng's main body and his Thunder Dragon clone both had their eyes closed, sitting opposite each other. His God of War clone sat to the side and stared at the heavenly scarlet golden orb above him. He watched as streams of light surged into the orb and shot out, landing on his and Brontosaurus clone. The God of War clone suddenly blinked. His eyes flickered as an image appeared in his mind. On the familiar Jade Capital Mountain, the defensive formation of the All Heavens Hall had taken effect. It had turned into a seemingly thin but tough light membrane that protected the entire mountain. However, the illusory figure of an old man in a traditional robe and a tall hat had unleashed a great power to restrict the defensive formation of the All Heavens Hall. A handsome young man in a white robe, who looked to be around 14 or 15 years old, took the opportunity to pass through the light membrane and set foot on the peak of Jade Capital Mountain. The eyes of Lin Feng's God of War clone flickered coldly. Reincarnation Taoist. Reincarnation Sect Master Shi Tianfang. The image disappeared in a flash. He could not see what happened next. Hey, friend, you're here for my Jade Capital Mountain, right? Welcome, there's a surprise waiting for you. Lin Feng smiled. Even though the image disappeared in a flash, Lin Feng could still see that, apart from the defensive formation of the All Heavens Hall, an intense battle was taking place in the Yin and Yang life and death formation on the outer layer. Vaguely, 3 huge Taiji diagrams that shared the same origin as him were glowing brightly, shocking the world. It looks like Little Yen, Little Lin, and Tianhao have all achieved the nascent divinity realm. Not bad, not bad. Lin Feng was overjoyed. However, Lin Feng was infuriated by the fact that enemies had invaded Jade Capital Mountain. The God of War clone stood up and walked around his and Brontosaurus clone. His gaze moved back and forth between the heavenly scarlet golden orb and the ocean of light outside. In the ocean of light, paths were flickering continuously, filling up the ocean of light and repairing the damage that the Yuhuang heavenly ocean had inflicted on his spirit sea. Purple and white light flickered from time to time on those invisible belts of light. The white light had the upper hand, but the purple light was also extremely tenacious. It was at a disadvantage but did not collapse, making it difficult for the white light to turn its advantage into a victory. Lin Feng stared at the white and purple light and muttered to himself, now isn't the time for you to race to reappear in the world, but everyone in Taishu Temple, I can't just sit and watch the spirit sea fall into your hands. In addition, I still need everyone to stay out of this world for a period of time. Only then will it be convenient for me to do things after I go out. Lin Feng's eyelids drooped slightly as a faint light flashed across his squinted eyes. He let out a long sigh. I want to thank both of you for helping me save a lot of time. Now that the time has come, let's begin. Lin Feng's true body, whose eyes had always been closed, suddenly opened his eyes at this moment. When his eyes opened and closed, boundless light flashed. In an instant, it was as though a layer of creation was born and destroyed, the creation and destruction of heaven and earth, reproduction and change, all the way to nirvana, and then the cycle began again. His Brontosaurus clone also opened his eyes at this moment. The dense purple light in his eyes almost condensed into substance, as though they were resplendent purple crystals. A Taiji tattoo appeared on the forehead of Lin Feng's true body and rotated continuously. From the Taiji tattoo, an illusory light shadow was gradually projected. The shape of the light shadow wasn't fixed, and it was constantly changing. There was a vast starry sky, a vast land, an azure blue sea, and a sky full of wind and flowing clouds. Suddenly, it would transform into a high mountain range, a long river, a long lake, a barren desert with quicksand, and a carpet of green grass. Other than everything in the natural world, there were also many intelligent life forms. There were tigers and leopards, birds, fish, insects, and even humans. Sometimes, the light shadow would transform into some inconspicuous things like a rock, a blade of grass, a speck of dust, a ray of sunlight, and so on. And so on and so forth. But all of these were all things in the world, the creation of all living beings. Black and white light flashed continuously on these light shadows. As the light shadows changed, Lin Feng's mind also seemed to have passed through countless paths. He felt as though he had transformed into the eternal starry sky of the universe, sitting and watching the waves rise and fall, and the stars in the sky, circulating endlessly, performing the most magnificent and mysterious scene in the world together. He felt as though he had transformed into a thick and boundless vast land, silently bearing the weight of all things. Silently, it nourished the growth of plants and gave birth to thousands of living beings. He felt as though he had transformed into a vast and boundless sea, the ebb and flow of the tide. When it was calm, it contained everything, and when it was violent, it turned into a destructive tsunami. Countless living beings in the water wandered in it, enjoying themselves. He felt as though he had transformed into the gusts of wind between heaven and earth, blowing the clouds and rolling them. He was formless and unpredictable. The mountains stood tall, regardless of the erosion of the wind and rain, the exposure of the sun, the traces of the moon and the sun, the activities of the beasts in the forest, and the roads that humans dug up on the mountains. Long rivers and lakes, the water surged endlessly, the lakes as smooth as a mirror. There were fish leaping out of the water, pelicans landing to catch them, and people rowing boats, walking on the water. Scholars and literati sighed at the passing of time. The desert quicksand, the scorching sun overhead, the rolling heat waves caused the light to distort, making the scene in front of one's eyes seem illusory and unreal. There was a lost traveler, struggling to crawl towards the oasis in the mirage. The green grass was like a cushion. Through the dense foliage of the forest, mottled sunlight shone down. When it landed on the grass, it formed scattered spots of light. The ground trembled, and the branches and leaves trembled. A small deer passed through the forest and flew far away. Lin Feng's mind seemed to have transformed into that deer, running non-stop. Suddenly, he fell to the ground, feeling a sharp pain in his leg. He whimpered and turned to look, but it was a huge animal trap, causing his hind leg to be covered in blood, revealing the eerie white bone. A moment later, a tall hunter walked out of the forest. Following the trail of blood, he found the little deer that was struggling to crawl. He grabbed its neck and lifted it up. Lin Feng looked at the fawn in his hand, his mind at this moment had already turned into this hunter. The hunter's heart was filled with joy, his family was waiting for him to return with a harvest, there was his old mother, there was his beloved wife, there was his son who had just turned 1 year old and was full of vigor. Walking in the dense forest, Lin Feng suddenly looked up, seeing a rare bird landing on a tree, its feathers gorgeous. If he could catch it, the men in the city would definitely like it. When the time comes, he could sell it for a good price, and he could get a few pieces of cloth for his old mother and wife to make new clothes for them. He put down the deer he hunted and carefully climbed up the tree. He was already as careful as he could, but who knew that he would still startle the bird? With a flap of its wings, it flew away. Lin Feng's mind seemed to have transformed into that bird, flying in the air. He even turned his head back to look at the annoyed hunter on the tree, letting out a few crisp chirps from his mouth, as if mocking that clumsy human. After that, in the blink of an eye, Lin Feng's mind had already walked through all the living beings in the world. Next, he turned into an unremarkable mountain rock, silently lying in the cold wind, not moving for a long time, until a mountain climber accidentally kicked him off the cliff. Lin Feng didn't feel anything. He tumbled all the way down, bumping into things, and finally fell to the bottom of the valley. His body was broken in many places, and he was no longer recognizable, but he didn't feel any pain. Silently, he continued to lie at the bottom of the valley, as if apart from changing his position, nothing had changed. He turned into a blade of grass, silently rooted in the soil, walking through spring, summer, autumn, and winter without feeling anything, alternating between withered yellow and emerald green. He didn't move, didn't think, and just let time pass. He turned into a ray of sunlight, from the moment he was born to the moment he fell to the ground and disappeared, it was only a short moment. But as long as the sun didn't set, he seemed to exist forever, endlessly. The sunlight absorbed by the photosynthesis of the plants on the ground was him, and the sunlight that still existed in the air was also him. Eternity and a moment seemed to merge into one at this moment, but he couldn't tell which one was him. In this way, Lin Feng's mind walked through the thousands of things of creation, both conscious and unconscious. He seemed to have turned into an independent world, but also seemed to be no longer himself. The concept of me gradually became blurry, confusing, and difficult to distinguish. But Lin Feng's expression was calm, and his state of mind was stable. I am the world, but the world is not me. The body of Lin Feng's original body gradually became blurry, but the light shadow above his head became clearer and clearer. The light shadow seemed to be independent of the spiritual sea world, independent of the vast thousand worlds, and independent of the great Tianyuan world, turning into a brand new world of creation. In this world, all things changed, and it was very mysterious. Although this world was still immature, still illusory, it had really jumped out of this world. At this point, Lin Feng took the first step to be equal to heaven and man. From now on, man was no longer under heaven. Everything in the world, from their own point of view, no matter who it was an independent individual, different from the rest. But if one left the point of view of the individual and stood from the point of view of the world, they were all just a part of this creation. The cultivators of the human clan cultivated in order to be able to transcend this kind of ordinary people. Even from the macro point of view of the world of creation, they were still different from the rest. Refining the spirit to return to the void was the first step to transcend and become independent. It was the process of breaking through and then establishing, jumping out of this world, distinguishing the true meaning of the great Tao, and forming a world of its own. Rays of light surged ceaselessly, yin and yang, life and death, light and darkness, eternity and instant, blue sky and yellow springs, reality and unreality, vastness and minuscule, creation and destruction. Numerous grand Taos converged towards the figure of light. At the same time, Lin Feng's Brontosaurus doppelganger made a move. However, it did not condense a Dharma body of the return to void. Instead, boundless runes lit up on its body, and all of these runes converged toward the forehead of the Brontosaurus doppelganger. More and more runes gathered at the center of its forehead, and a large amount of light scattered, as if they had transformed into tangible ribbons that extended between heaven and earth, becoming even more closely connected with heaven and earth. The void seemed to have lit up, and the Brontosaurus doppelganger's heart trembled slightly. It felt as if an incomparably vast will was making contact with it. There were no obvious thought fluctuations emanating from this will, but it truly existed. At the same time, it was incomparably majestic, and it was unprecedentedly vast. The doppelganger still retained a clear consciousness and thought process, and the vast will had no intention of interfering with it. However, it felt as if the doppelganger was gradually becoming an extension of the will, and the two of them seemed to be gradually fusing as one. Lin Feng's Brontosaurus doppelganger felt as if its demonic soul and bloodline were both undergoing earth-shattering changes. Chapter 863. The inscriptions on the body of Lin Feng's Brontosaurus clone converged toward his forehead, but when he established a connection with the vast will, a large amount of light dispersed from his forehead and returned to his body. This light enshrouded the Brontosaurus clone, causing his demonic soul, body, and bloodline to undergo an earth-shattering transformation. When all of this was over, a strange inscription gradually appeared on the Brontosaurus clone's forehead. Once the inscription was completely formed, it meant that Lin Feng's Brontosaurus clone had cultivated to the primordial true spirit stage. This inscription was something that even primordial true spirit stage great demonic beasts had to condense into a true spirit divine vein. In the future, they would have to rely on this true spirit divine vein to guide the power of the stars and refine them. The primordial true spirit stage great demonic beasts of the primordial true spirit stage were completely different from human cultivators. This primordial true spirit stage was a true spirit formed by the heaven and earth of this vast thousand world. Once it was rooted into one's demonic soul and bloodline, it would form a true spirit divine vein and become even more closely aligned with heaven and earth. Even though it was a tangible body, it was like an invisible extension of heaven and earth. At the same time, the true spirit divine vein also represented the foundation of one's bloodline. Tracing back to their roots, all of the demonic beasts in the heavenly desolate land had at least reached the primordial true spirit stage and condensed a true spirit divine vein. Only then could they continue their bloodline and pass it down from generation to generation. This way, their descendants would not become wild beasts and would need to regain intelligence before they could cultivate. As Lin Feng's main body began to condense a true spirit divine vein, his Brontosaurus clone also began to gradually condense a true spirit divine vein. However, compared to other human cultivators who refined their spirits to return to the void, or great sages of the demonic beasts who condensed a true spirit divine vein, Lin Feng's side was a little different. The great Tao of the spirit sea world was connected to the ball of light like invisible ribbons of light, and the dazzling and chaotic light in the ocean of light was also constantly flowing into the ball of light. Within the sea of light, there was an invisible belt of light that was constantly being filled up. White light and purple light flashed in unison in a dazzling display, but they were also continuously surging into the ball of light and being swept up by the heavenly sea golden bead. Then, they were projected onto the true spirit divine tattoos on the foreheads of Lin Feng's true body and the lightning dragon clone. Lin Feng's main body and Brontosaurus's avatar had established a profound connection through the celestial scarlet orb. The light and shadow above the main body's head gradually condensed into a solid body, and the outline was clear and complete. After much planning and hard work, he had finally succeeded in refining his spirit to return to the void in this spirit sea. The essence soul embodiment was the manifestation of a cultivator's Tao validation dharmic formulation's will. When different people reached the essence soul realm using the same dharmic formulation, the essence soul avatars they obtained were basically the same. There might be some differences in the manifestation of their dharmic powers and auras, but the essence was the same. The Return to Void stage cultivator's Return to Void stage was a level higher than the essence soul embodiment. It also transcended the form of the cultivator's Tao validation dharmic formulation's will, and incorporated the cultivator's own understanding of the Great Tao. Therefore, the Return to Void stage cultivator's Return to Void stage was unique. Even if they cultivated the same Tao technique, the Return to Void stage's dharmic formulations would be very different. Take the current Mount Shu sword sect's venerated swordsman, for example. His essence soul embodiment was a huge bronze broadsword, and his Return to Void stage body was a sword-wielding man with a powerful aura. He was 10 feet tall and wielded a huge sword. His expression was dignified, and his eyes were like lightning. Like him, the junior Broken Mountain Sword sect's Ning Lang, who had also used the Little Shang sword to prove his essence soul embodiment, was also basically a huge bronze broadsword. Ning Lang's sword heart was shattered, and it was almost impossible for him to refine his spirit to return to the void. However, if he could successfully ascend to the Return to Void stage, then his Return to Void stage physique would definitely be different from the current venerated swordsman's, both in appearance and inside. And the current venerated swordsman's Return to Void stage physique was also different from the previous venerated swordsman's Return to Void stage. Lin Feng's essence soul embodiment was an extremely vast black and white Tai Chi diagram that seemed to encompass the entire galaxy. It was precisely the manifestation of the power and will of his heavenly Tao virtue scripture. And now, Lin Feng's Return to Void stage physique was shockingly exactly the same as his own. He was dressed in a purple robe with wide sleeves. His hair was not bound, and it hung loosely over his shoulders. And here I thought that I would condense a Return to Void stage physique that looked like a panda. Lin Feng smiled rather mischievously as he looked calmly into the eyes of Brontosaurus's doppelganger. A mysterious connection was established between the two through the heavenly scarlet golden bead. On the forehead of Lin Feng's Return to Void stage physique, a true spirit divine pattern that was exactly the same as the one on Brontosaurus's doppelganger suddenly appeared. Meanwhile, countless miracles also flashed through the eyes of Brontosaurus's doppelganger. At this moment, his powerful and massive body was constantly fluctuating between illusory and corporeal. In one instant, it was a dragon body that was brimming with boundless demonic power. In the next instant, it had transformed into balls of light. It was as if it was a Return to Void stage physique that a human cultivator had attained after refining their spirit to return to the void. The two of them verified one another before returning to normal. Brontosaurus's doppelganger reverted back to its demonic form. A vast demonic power shook the void as a true spirit divine pattern appeared on its forehead. It was mysterious and powerful. As its dragon eyes opened and closed, a shocking purple light burst forth. After the process of condensing the true spirit divine pattern, the purple scales on Brontosaurus's doppelganger had now turned white. As its scales opened and closed, bolts of terrifying lightning flashed. These bolts of lightning were extremely strange. They were not of a single color. Instead, they were a combination of crimson, yellow, green, and blue. Each bolt of lightning was like a thin thread of 4 different colors intertwining together. Although the 4 colors combined to form a single bolt of lightning, they were clearly distinguishable. On top of the 4-colored lightning, there were also black and white colors that flashed, adding to its power. This was the 8 desolation divine thunder that Lin Feng had deduced from the Brontosaurus race to a new height. It had transformed into the four symbols yin-yang divine thunder, which was much more powerful than before. His Brontosaurus was completely different from the primordial sky dragon Brontosaurus race of Tianhuang mainland. At this moment, Lin Feng's main body smiled faintly as a system notification sounded in his mind. Congratulations to the host for creating the third chapter of the Heavenly Tao Sutra, Yin-Yang chapter. Congratulations to the host for successfully creating the third chapter of the Heavenly Tao Sutra, Yin-Yang Fusion True Sutra. An image appeared in Lin Feng's mind. Chaos broke apart and turned into yin-yang, giving birth to all things. Tao, heaven, earth, time, person, matter, heart, life, all of them were born. Heaven and earth, void, reality, light and heavy, up and down, clear and turbid, sun and moon, brightness and darkness, rise and fall, enlightenment and confusion, letting go and persistence. Day and night, movement, heat and cold, fast and slow, male and female, image, beginning and end, spring, summer, autumn, winter, thunder and lightning, rain and snow. Coincidence, advance and retreat, gain and loss, gather and disperse, open and close, in and out, inside and outside, north, future and past, eternity and instant. Life and death, longevity and destruction, hardness and softness, rise and fall, the layers of principles were opposing yet unified, fusing with one another and giving birth to all things, establishing the beginning of heaven and earth. As for the principles of all things in heaven and earth, they could be traced back to the source and everything returned to one. Lin Feng had never felt that his understanding of the various principles of heaven and earth was as thorough as it was now. He smiled faintly. The true spirit divine pattern on his forehead had already disappeared and his void reversion Dharma body flashed. Although there seemed to be no changes and he still looked like himself, he had actually removed his Dharma body and was still in the form of his essence spirit. Lin Feng stretched out his finger and pointed in the void. An ancient and desolate, grand and majestic bell sound rang, and Lin Feng's Dharma treasure, the bell of creation, appeared. The bell of creation vibrated and turned into a huge pitch-black stone door. The surface was covered with thousands of relief carvings of scenes. In the ancient desolation, it exuded a strong aura of life. The first change of the bell of creation, the gate of creation. It represented the birth of infinite life and the creation of infinite things. It contained the great power to open up a place and create a world. Lin Feng looked at the gate of creation and changed his hand seals. In an instant, hundreds of millions of magical powers were injected into the gate of creation. At the same time, the great Tao of heaven and earth in the spirit sea fell down and guided the gate of creation. Lin Feng smiled and said, "Open." A joyful voice came from the gate of creation, "Yes, Master." With a boom, the gate made a muffled sound and slowly opened to both sides. An invisible river flowed out of the gate that opened to both sides. The river flowed at a steady pace, but it had a power that would never stop. The second transformation of the bell of creation, the river of time. It represented all things and all the years of life. Time passed without return, and everything grew and aged in the long river of time. It contained the power to dominate the passage of time. In the river, a 5 or 6-year-old boy emerged from the river. He smiled and bowed towards Lin Feng, "Good fortune greets Master." It was the original spirit of the bell of creation, Fate Creation Boy. "Follow me home, old master." Lin Feng smiled and landed on the river of time. The surging river swept the Brontosaurus doppelganger, the doppelganger of the god of war, the heavenly scarlet golden pearl, and Tao Master Liuba outside the light ball. The surface of the heavenly scarlet golden pearl emitted layers of purple brilliance, guiding the river of time into the sea of light. The pearl's brilliance flickered, and in the sea of light, the invisible ribbons of light that were constantly filling and repairing the gap were pulled away by Lin Feng's river of time. The purple light and white light that were competing against each other suddenly became chaotic. Whether it was the people of the Taishu temple or the Yuda clan, they immediately realized that something was wrong. Under the influence of the sudden intervention of the third party, the white light and the purple light that were originally fighting dislocated. This dislocation instantly formed an extremely terrifying twisting power that suddenly burst out. In the sea of light, the light that had gradually become peaceful and orderly suddenly became chaotic again. In the spirit sea, the invisible ribbons of light formed by the great Tao shook violently. The wound that was originally opened by the Yuhuang heavenly sea had been constantly being repaired and was close to being completely healed. However, at this moment, under the influence of the sudden dislocation of the power of the people of the Taishu Temple and the Yuda clan, it was torn again. When both sides tried to save it, they found that this tear contained an irreversible and unchangeable meaning. They couldn't save it. The consequence of this re-tearing of the spirit sea was that the entire world of the spirit sea began to shake violently, as if a giant had been awakened. Chapter 864. The world of the spirit sea trembled violently, and the originally peaceful world suddenly became restless. Formless belts of light formed by the great Tao of heaven and earth lit up, and the boundless power caused the entire world to shake. No matter if it was Lin Feng, Tao Venerable One, or the rest, an image appeared in their consciousnesses. It was a huge foreign space that seemed to cover the heaven and earth. It was connected to the boundless world everywhere and stuck closely together. It was like a membrane that was attached to the surface of the boundless world. However, if one took a closer look, they would feel that this foreign space seemed to be an independent point that was like a speck of dust. At that moment, this world that was like a plane started to distort violently before stretching out continuously. Powerful energy gushed out, and the great demons of Yudu in the 1,000 worlds that were shrouded in black fog trembled in unison. The white halos on the 3 long horns on their heads were plated with a mysterious purple pattern that didn't dissipate from start to finish. The connection between them and the spirit sea was also temporarily severed, and only that halo was left. The violent power of the world of the spirit sea started to break through the void and enter the dimensional world to suppress the descendants of Yuhuang's celestial sea. The expressions of all the great demons of Yudu changed slightly, and they hurriedly cast spells together to conceal the dimensional world once again, blocking the senses of the world of the spirit sea from them. The white halo on the horns on the heads of the Yudu descendants gradually faded away, but all of the demons of Yudu burst out with unresigned and furious roars. They could feel the gate of the spirit sea closing once again, and it returned to its previous sealed state. A few great demons of Yudu with demon power that shook heaven and earth howled in unison, and the descendants of the younger generation immediately quietened down. Even though we can't control the spirit sea, Taishu Temple and that third power that suddenly interfered are the same. Even though the halo mark on the spirit sea hasn't completely faded away, it's different from before. At least a few years, at most a few decades, and our race will be able to completely break free from the restraints of the spirit sea. The spirit sea being sealed this time is also different from the time 10,000 years ago. At most 100 years later, it will definitely reopen. With the foundation that we've laid today, we can fight again at that time. It was different from the Yudu race that was originally outside the spirit sea and only met with rebuff. The people in the Taishu Temple who were in the spirit sea suffered even more. The talismans left behind by the Taishu Taoist, Wen Qiang, Yuehua Tian, Yan Xinghe, and Huang Chen all exploded and turned into dust. A sudden, violent power shook Lord Tai and the others out of his spiritual sea. The spiritual sea was sealed again. Lord Tai and the others did not have the time to regret their failure. They found that even though they had been shaken out of the spiritual sea, the violent world of the spiritual sea was still pressing down on them in the void. Shoichi Dashin had an expressionless face. It's definitely the master of profound gate. He interfered in the struggle between us and Yudu and cleverly guided us to borrow the power of us and Yudu to mend the spirit sea to tear that gap open again. The spirit sea has been sealed again. If we want to open it again, it will probably take close to 100 years. He sure has a good plan. Does he want to fight with us 100 years later? Lord Tai had a calm expression and sighed softly. He stood in front of Xianlin Taoist, Yun Yuanjin, Lin Daohan, Kai Fengzhou, and Lord Yu Yuan with Shoichi Dashin. They worked together to resist the suppression of the Spirit Sea. The suppression this time wasn't as violent as the one at the Yuhuang Celestial Sea, but it still temporarily suppressed the 7 people of the Taishu Temple in the void, making it hard for them to escape. Silently, Lord Tai said, "We will come again 100 years later. The foundation we have laid today can still be used then. My Taishu Temple, the Master of Profound Gate, and the 3 families of Yudu race, we still have the greatest advantage." Xianlin Taoist didn't say anything. The rich emotions in his eyes had turned into emptiness and indifference. Lord Yu Yuan of the conservative faction frowned, and his face turned cold. Kai Fengzhou shook his head continuously and smiled bitterly. "Ha, the Master of Profound Gate, good move." Yun Yuanjin had a smile that was not a smile, and Lin Daohan's expression returned to its usual calmness. Neither of them said anything. Unlike the people of the Taishu Temple who were temporarily suppressed in the void by the Spirit Sea, Lin Feng, who had rushed out through the gap in the Spirit Sea that looked like a sea of light, didn't wait for the suppression of the Spirit Sea to take effect. He immediately took out the boundary-breaking stone. As the light flowed, Lin Feng had already left the void and returned to the boundless world. The moment he rushed out of the gap in the Spirit Sea, the system beep rang in his mind. Congratulations to the host's personal disciple, Yang Qing, for advancing to the Yuanying realm. Congratulations to the host's personal disciple, Xiao Yan, for proving his primordial spirit realm. The host has received a reward. Congratulations to the host's personal disciple, Shi Tianhao, for proving his primordial spirit realm. The host has received a reward. Congratulations to the host's personal disciple, Wang Lin, for proving his primordial spirit realm. The host has received a reward. Lin Feng calmed himself down and looked around. He realized that he was on the East Sea. The random teleportation of the boundary-breaking stone was not too bad this time. It just happened to send him to the human world in the Divine Land. After forcefully interrupting the effect of the boundary-breaking stone's fixed-point return, Lin Feng's mind moved, and his connection with Yujing Mountain was completely restored. A cold light flashed in his eyes, and he said, "Mount Shu Sword Sect, Underworld Hall, Reincarnation Sect, East Heaven Gate, ha, you guys are very good." With a slight thought, Lin Feng's eyes became colder. "Golden Cicada, so there's an old friend like you. Good. Very good." Lin Feng looked in the direction of the land in the west. His gaze seemed to pierce through the void and land on Yujing Mountain. The Book of Life and Death has finally been completely refined. Instead of devouring the creation artifact embryo in the Yin-Yang Sea, it devoured the reincarnation sect's 6 paths of reincarnation. Ha, you want to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You sure have a big appetite. A bright light flashed in Lin Feng's eyes. Oh, is Little E going to succeed as well? At this moment, on Yujing Mountain, Su Anda, Jia Luosher, and Xiao Dongtian were all dumbfounded as they looked at the void that had returned to normal. They watched as the invisible ribbons of light gradually disappeared. Once again, they could not detect them with their cultivation levels. At the same time, they saw that the peak of the mountain had become empty again. The sect leader of the reincarnation sect, Shi Tianfang, had disappeared as if he had never existed. Shi Tianfang, an expert of the Tao integration realm, had finally unified the reincarnation sect after it had been divided for 10,000 years. But just like that, he had been wiped off the face of this world without any room for resistance. In all fairness, even without the talismans of the reincarnation Taoist, Su Anda could easily defeat Shi Tianfang among all the experts of the Tao integration realm present, even without the Book of Life and Death. In fact, even if he had to fight against Shi Tianfang and the 6 paths of life and death at the same time, Su Anda would still be confident enough to deal with them. Although Jia Luosher's sword heart was damaged and activating the heavenly immortal sword Qi was a great burden on him, he was still confident that he could defeat Shi Tianfang in a one-on-one fight. However, he might not be able to kill him. Xiao Dongtian might not easily win against Shi Tianfang, but at least he would not be at a disadvantage. However, such an expert who was at the same level as them was instantly killed by those strange, invisible light ribbons. Seeing this scene, even Su Anda, who had finally created the Book of Life and Death and had a Dharma treasure of creation in his hand, shuddered with fear. He asked himself if he could kill Shi Tianfang so easily in an instant even with the Book of Life and Death in his hand, unless Shi Tianfang did not dodge or defend himself. Instead, he just stood there and stretched out his neck to let him hit him. However, Shi Tianfang was obviously not that stupid. In the face of the sudden attack, he used all kinds of defensive methods and the 6 paths of reincarnation Tao fruit, the reincarnation Taoist talisman, the immortal divine light of heavenly Tao, the reincarnation art, and the reincarnation rebirth art. Under such circumstances, even Jia Luoshi could not kill him. Su Anda had to spend a lot of effort to activate the Book of Life and Death to kill him. However, under such circumstances, right in front of them, Shi Tianfang was instantly killed without leaving a corpse. All of Shi Tianfang's methods were useless. They could not be described as papier-mâché. They were like air, as if they did not exist at all. More importantly, Su Anda and the others had no idea what was going on. This was what they were most afraid of. The unknown was always the most terrifying. However, Su Anda and the others quickly reacted, "No, the problem lies in this immortal mountain. Only those who tried to refine Yujing Mountain would encounter the calamity just now. Otherwise, they wouldn't have waited until we were about to completely break through the celestial sect of wonders and not come into play." Thinking about this, the experts who were attacking the mountain became more and more excited. They looked at Yujing Mountain with more and more eager eyes. However, they quickly suppressed their greed. The terrible power just now was strange and overbearing. It was too shocking. Before they knew the depth of the power, it was really not good to act rashly. No one knew whether or not that terrifying power was a one-time thing, and whether or not Shi Tianfang had used up all of it. If they rushed forward at this time, they would probably end up like Shi Tianfang. Apart from Su Anda, who had the Book of Life and Death, who might be able to resist it a little, everyone else present would probably die if they touched it. Su Anda did not want to try. His target was the light ball in the Yin-Yang Sea. The reason why he used the 6 paths of reincarnation to refine the Book of Life and Death was because he wanted to refine the light ball after he got it. This way, he would have 2 creation treasures in his hands. It would be best if he could get the white jade pillar from Yingzhou Fairy Mountain. With no hope for Yujing Mountain, Su Anda's desire for other treasures had increased. With the Book of Life and Death in hand, he had the capital. As the Book of Life and Death flipped, the light and shadow of a grand world appeared in the sky above Yujing Mountain. The world did not seem dark and terrifying, but it was lifeless and gray. There was no sign of life. Wherever the gray shrouded, everything seemed to have come to a stop. Everything in the world became colorless gray, and all life lost its luster. However, it was not extinct. Instead, it entered a wonderful world where all the rules were different. A world that belonged to the dead. As the gray world suppressed it, the yin and yang life and death array immediately began to disintegrate. Li Yuanfang's expression was still calm, but his face gradually turned pale. He looked up at the mysterious heaven-time light grotto heaven above his head. At this moment, in the mysterious heaven-time light grotto heaven, a young scholar dressed in purple and white robes was sitting cross-legged under a small mysterious heaven treasure tree with his eyes closed. Chapter 865. The young scholar in the profound sky eternal light grotto heaven was Lin Feng's second disciple, Zhu Yi. A projection appeared above his head. It was his appearance when he was 15 or 16 years old. Above the projection was an even taller giant with 4 faces and 8 arms. He sat cross-legged on the back of a huge qilin. An azure dragon coiled around his body, and a phoenix circled above his head, letting out crisp cries. One of his 8 arms was holding a thick book, another was calmly writing on a piece of paper, another was holding a ruler, and the other was playing a zither. In the void, the huge zither landed on the back of a huge tortoise. Silently, the tortoise lay beside the giant. countless characters of light and dark gathered to form a moral essay. They were overflowing with a scholarly aura as they floated around the giant. Regardless of whether it was the Yuanying or the manifestation of heaven and earth, they had both reached their peak. They were only a step away from the nascent soul realm. Not far away from Zhu Yi was a huge white jade pillar. It was more than 1,000 zhang tall, like a pillar that supported the heavens. It gave off a feeling that it could prop up the entire world, and it exuded a majestic aura of creation. Around this white jade pillar, the eternal night devil steel and the immeasurable light Bodhi heart lamp stood on the left and right, facing each other. They created pure darkness and light that fused into the white jade pillar. They were nurturing this creation treasure embryo, and at the same time, they were trying to figure out the concept within. As for Zhu Yi's Haoyang clone, he was currently walking in the direction of the 28 constellations. He walked around the white jade pillar in circles, and with every step he took, he would punch the white jade pillar. He wasn't attacking the white jade pillar. Instead, he was using this powerful return to void realm clone to imprint Zhu Yi's spiritual will onto the white jade pillar, and he was refining it continuously. Zhu Yi had already consumed the 33 days fortune immortal pill. As the medicinal energy spread out, layers of the great Tao of heaven and earth entered his body. This allowed Zhu Yi, who had already reached the peak of the late Yuanying realm, to get closer to the formless door of the nascent soul in his sea of consciousness. At this moment, Zhu Yi felt like he was sitting in front of the door, silently planning to nourish himself. Hao Yang's clone was responsible for infusing his consciousness into the white jade pillar. Zhu Yi himself was a late-stage nascent soul cultivator, so if he wanted to directly refine this magic treasure embryo of creation, it could be said that he did not even need to think about it. Fortunately, he had the vast Yang clone to do it for him. However, in order to ensure that this embryo would not go to waste and truly take that crucial step, Zhu Yi's main body would need to work hard together. The plan that Lin Feng and his master and disciple had come up with was to use Zhu Yi to prove his primordial soul and guide the great Tao of heaven and earth to help the white jade pillar achieve good fortune. This was both Zhu Yi's and the white jade pillars. Just as Zhu Yi was concentrating on his cultivation, a black robe in his storage pouch suddenly shook. The serene sky robe. Along with the serene sky robe, the East Heaven Gate cultivator Yin Sungchen was also imprisoned. Yin Sungchen's expression was calm, and his eyes flickered. You actually want to use this opportunity to prove your primordial soul Tao? At the final moment of your breakthrough to the primordial soul realm, you will definitely not be able to imprison me and the serene sky robe. That will be the time for me to escape. Once we escape, your mind will definitely be shaken, and you will fail to break through to the primordial soul realm. Although I am separated by your dermic powers and this grotto heaven, I can clearly feel the power and intent of Master's all-heaven treasure wheel. Master is not a match for the Master of Mystic Gate, but since he has come, he must be confident. Either the Master of Mystic Gate is not around, or there are many experts accompanying him, so there is no need to fear the Master of Mystic Gate. I want to escape, this is my last chance. Zhu Yi, Wang Lin, you saw that I am not a primordial soul, so you did not send me the mysterious sky god sealing banner. You will pay for your arrogance. At this moment, the flow of void spirit chi in the mysterious sky time light grotto heaven suddenly became slightly turbulent. A terrifying aura of creation came from the outside world. The dark, silent, and dull world nomological true meaning made the living beings in the mysterious sky time light grotto heaven feel waves of discomfort. Tian Chiwa was lying under the mysterious sky treasure tree, holding his head with both hands like an ostrich burying its head in the sand. His little butt was facing outside, and his entire body was shivering. To a gremlin with the ability to transform and nurture, the deathly silent aura was like a natural enemy, terrifying him. Even Tian Chiwa, who had always been carefree, felt extreme fear at this moment. Zhu Yi's expression was calm, but his eyes were slightly solemn. He reached out and swiped the void, and a light and shadow illusion appeared. In the light and shadow was the scene of the yin and yang life and death formation being completely broken. It was the scene of Su Anda, the Book of Life and Death, Jia Luosher, Shao Dongtian, the mysterious sky seal, Zhang'anrui, and the others surrounding Yujing Mountain. The Azura War Saber, a Mahayana-grade magic treasure that had been trapped in the yin and yang life and death formation, was also freed at this moment, exuding a monstrous murderous aura. Xiao Yan, Shi Tianhao, Wang Lin, and Xianmen Tianzong and the others led by Xianli were still fighting to the death against the enemy. The broken yin and yang life and death formation turned into a small dot of light and flew back to Li Yuanfang's glabella on a branch of the mysterious sky treasure tree. Li Yuanfang was holding a talisman in his hand. Zhu Yi recognized it as the talisman he had left for Li Yuanfang. His eyes were still calm, but he stood up. His senior and junior brothers were fighting for the sect, and only he was in the mysterious sky time light grotto heaven. Looking at the scene outside, his heart was in turmoil, and he wanted nothing more than to break out of seclusion and fight side by side with his fellow sect members. Zhu Yi raised his hand and wrote the word, quiet, in the void. He told himself that the more dangerous the situation was, the calmer he should be in order to get through it. But when he wrote the last stroke of the third, quiet, word and was about to make the last tick, Zhu Yi's movements suddenly slowed down. His eyes were fixed on the three, quiet, words left by his magic power in the void. Suddenly, Zhu Yi reached out and erased the three words. Qi kept rolling in Zhu Yi's chest, and in the end, Zhu Yi completely gave up on restraining himself. He threw his head back and let out a long, clear roar. This kind of long howl, Xiao Yan had it before, Shi Tianhao had it before, even Wang Lin had it before, only Zhu Yi had never had it before. But with this long roar, Zhu Yi's spirit, qi, and spirit burst to an unprecedented peak. Hao Yang's clone also roared at the sky and punched the white jade pillar at an even faster speed. Amidst the long roar, Zhu Yi's clear and impassioned voice sounded in the mysterious sky time light grotto heaven. My wish is for the principles of heaven and earth to be spread across the world, so that everyone can hear it and know it, so that everyone has the opportunity to understand the mysteries of knowledge. The primordial spirit door that had never been opened before suddenly opened at this moment. My wish is for all living beings in the billions of worlds to be free and unfettered, to no longer be ignorant and mediocre. Zhu Yi's yuanying turned into a stream of light and rushed into his heaven and earth dharma idol, advancing towards the opening of the primordial spirit door. At this moment, Yin Sangchen and the serene sky robe rebelled together. This is the time. But unexpectedly, he heard Zhu Yi's voice continue to sing, my wish is to forever create a bright universe, all evil and crooked paths, never to enter the world, all demons and monsters, evil and evil, to forever disappear from the world. Amidst the chanting, Zhu Yi's vigorous dermic powers seemed to turn into a vortex. As it rotated, Yin Sangchen's expression changed drastically, and his yuanying, spirit, and body disintegrated together. A scream also came from the serene sky robe. Hao Yang's clone suddenly turned around and grabbed the serene sky robe. After Zhu Yi's heaven and earth dharma idol entered the primordial spirit door, it suddenly disintegrated and turned into countless talismans. These talismans then turned into words formed by the power of light and darkness in the void, and together, they wrote a shocking chapter. Zhu Yi's voice still resounded in the world, even passing through the barrier of the mysterious sky time light grotto heaven, so that everyone outside the grotto heaven could vaguely hear it. My wish is for everyone in the world to be like dragons and saints, to be free and unfettered, to control their own fate and destiny. Endless great Daos poured down, cleansing Zhu Yi's body and paying attention to the white jade pillar at the same time. Hao Yang's clone put his fists together, spread his fingers, and slapped the white jade pillar with both palms. Then, he turned the upright white jade pillar horizontally and lifted it up with both hands. The eternal night devil steel and the immeasurable light Bodhi heart lamp stood at the two ends of the white jade pillar, each emitting a peaceful and auspicious aura. Zhu Yi's voice sounded. May the two of you achieve good fortune together with this treasure and obtain eternal life. Countless light and darkness words suddenly appeared on the white jade pillar, covering it and causing it to distort violently. The Dharma treasure embryo, the 9-palace tortoise shell that Zhu Yi obtained from the ancient desolate sea world, and the serene sky robe that had its Dharma treasure, the essence spirit apostle's body, destroyed, were thrown into the white jade pillar. You and I shall help all living beings together and transcend to the other shore. As Zhu Yi spoke, the white jade pillar suddenly trembled, and its distorted form gradually stabilized. An extremely majestic aura spread out. Endless radiance covered the mysterious heaven-time light grotto heaven. Amidst the radiance, a sacred, majestic, solemn, and radiant golden bridge appeared. The golden bridge was thousands of kilometers long, like a rainbow with a myriad of phenomena, all-encompassing. The golden bridge released tens of thousands of beams of light, and there were many flower buds around it. These flower buds bloomed, and petals spread out one by one, scattering in all directions. It was like a deluge of heavenly flowers. There was also an indistinct celestial singing in the air. At first, it was inaudible, but eventually, it resounded throughout the universe. One end of the bridge was right in front of one's eyes, with a stone stele and a lamp on each side. The other end extended into the radiance, but one could not see its specific shape. One could only feel a majestic concept of power that could reach the other shore and help all living beings. The majestic aura of good fortune spread out, and the bridge was like a world of good fortune. At the same time, a giant Taiji diagram that emitted a scholarly aura appeared on the golden bridge, covering the sky and earth. Within the Taiji diagram, the 4 spirits of the dragon, phoenix, tortoise, and qilin appeared. Endless light and darkness words surged, finally forming a huge and profound character above the Taiji diagram. E. A clear and bright singing voice sounded from this Taiji diagram. Saint's beautiful world shocking chapter, profound sect creation of yin and yang heaven. Enlightening all living beings on the Tao of Yi, the golden bridge crosses 3,000 worlds. Chapter 866. In the Xiantian time light grotto heaven, there was a majestic golden bridge that seemed to have traversed through the ages and led the trend of humanity. The majestic concept of power and the vigorous creation aura that could ferry people to the Nirvana realm was shocking. The creation treasure, the golden bridge of the Nirvana realm. It was not formed by Zhu Yi's magical power but the real golden bridge of the Nirvana realm. Cross the sea of bitterness, transcend the Nirvana realm, and ferry all living beings. On the golden bridge, a Tai Chi diagram that was overflowing with the aura of literature rotated silently, sweeping up Zhu Yi's physical body and the ancient sage robe. The treasure spirit of the ancient sage robe revealed an image. It was an elegant old man in a white robe. He smiled and entered the Tai Chi diagram together with Zhu Yi's physical body. In the next moment, the Tai Chi diagram turned in the void and turned back into the appearance of the purple-robed scholar. He wore a white robe and stepped on the golden bridge beneath him. He was the disciple of the Mystic Gates master, Lin Feng, and the 4th person to attain the essence soul Tao, Zhu Yi. Zhu Yi's expression was calm. His mind was connected to the golden bridge of the Nirvana realm. He felt that his entire body had turned into a grand world. That wonderful feeling made him excited. With a thought, Zhu Yi understood everything. Although my Paramita golden bridge has achieved creation, it is still a distance away from being completely perfected. However, it was not a problem with my blood sacrifice. The blood sacrifice was very successful. It was because of the golden bridge of the Nirvana realm's own concept of power. In the future, when I travel the world and enlighten living beings, the power of the golden bridge of the Nirvana realm will be closer to perfection. This is the path that I originally hoped to take. That is why the blood sacrifice on the white jade pillar and the golden bridge of the Nirvana realm will have such a concept of power. The ancient sage robe on his body transmitted his thoughts. I see that the word "e" should be the beginning of a new article, right? I have learned a lot from the beginning of your article. If there is a continuation, I will probably be able to reach the Mahayana level immediately. This new article of yours is even better than the one that caused the saints to cry out in unison. Zhu Yi nodded. After I attained the primordial soul realm, I felt inspired and wrote this word. Indeed, I had an idea in my heart, to write a book that would be passed down to the next generation to fulfill my ambition. This is just the beginning, I will definitely complete it in the future. And now. Zhu Yi's eyes flickered. Let's get rid of these enemies who invaded my Xianmen Tianzong first. With a flash of the Permitha bridge beneath him, he had already rushed out of the mysterious heaven-time-light paradise. On the Jade Capital Mountain, a group of people looked at the void above the mysterious heaven treasure tree in shock. The huge commotion caused by the foundation of the Permitha bridge had shocked everyone and made them feel it. The Book of Life and Death in Su Anda's hand flickered repeatedly. Its aura was as if it had encountered a well-matched opponent. It was both excited and fearful. Could it be that the white jade pillar has been refined by someone? The second disciple of the mystic gate master, Zhu Yi, has yet to show himself. Could it be? Thoughts flashed in the minds of Jia Luoshe, Su Anda, Xiao Dongtian, and the others. The group wanted to rush to the top of the mysterious heaven treasure tree. Xiao Yan and the others naturally would not let them do as they wished. They all rushed forward. At this moment, a rainbow-like golden light rushed out of the mysterious heaven-time-light paradise. With the majestic power of a creation world, it pressed down on Su Anda and the others. Su Anda's eyes were fixed on the golden light. He held the Book of Life and Death in his right hand and flipped the pages with his left hand. His movements were so solemn and slow. It was as if every time he flipped a page, he was stirring up a world. As the Book of Life and Death flipped, it evolved into a gray world. It faced the golden light that was rushing toward it and blocked it. The golden light manifested into a magnificent golden bridge. At this moment, Zhu Yi was standing on the golden bridge. He did not look at Su Anda. Instead, he looked at Xiao Yan, Wang Lin, Shi Tianhao, Yu Hongyan, Li Yuanfang, Luo Qinggu, and Yang Qing and the others in the All-Heaven Great Hall. Everyone has worked hard. I finally made it in time. After saying this, his Hao Yang clone jumped off the golden bridge and faced the Dark Hall branch master Song Di, who was also at the Return to Void stage. Meanwhile, Zhu Yi joined his palms together. The Permitha golden bridge pressed down on the Book of Life and Death and Su Anda. A pitch-black light flashed in Su Anda's eyes. It became more and more like a bottomless abyss. At the bottom of the abyss, a black mist swirled, and there was a faint black light flowing. Within the black light, there were countless pained human faces. All of them sat cross-legged in the black mist and made hand seals. He extended a hand and pointed at Zhu Yi. He only said one word. Die. The gray world of the Book of Life and Death instantly turned into a gloomy black. Boundless, extreme death intense surged from it. After being enveloped by the black world, even the light of the Permitha golden bridge dimmed for a moment. The lamp at the head of the bridge was extinguished. Boundless darkness swept over, and the air of death was heavy. It was as if it was sending Zhu Yi to his grave. Zhu Yi, who was standing on the golden bridge, felt the magic power around his body stagnate. His consciousness also seemed to have sunk into a deathly stillness. The holy ancient robe he was wearing did not react in the face of such an attack. His pure white robe also became gray. It was as if it could be weathered and turned into ashes at any time. The falling flowers that accompanied the descent of the Permitha golden bridge also rapidly withered and turned into specks of mud. The surface of the magnificent golden bridge seemed to be mottled and peeling. Compared to the earth-shattering battle with Lin Feng outside the mystic heaven realm, the attack of the Book of Life and Death became much quieter now that it had achieved the creation realm. However, the terrifying power contained within it was even stronger. It was a terrifying power that seemed to be able to determine the life and death of people, the life and death of all living beings, and the life and death of all living things. It was irreversible, irrefutable, unstoppable, and unstoppable. If it said you were a dead person, you were already dead. Not only did it target humans and living creatures, but it also killed things that had no consciousness. However, it was not enough against the Permitha Golden Bridge, which was also a creation realm Dharma treasure. The mottled and decaying golden bridge that seemed to be shrouded by the black world flashed in the void. Boundless golden light surged out and illuminated the black world of death. In the next moment, the sacred and majestic golden bridge directly passed through the black world and pierced through it. Zhu Yi was wearing the holy ancient robe and stood calmly on the golden bridge. There was no sign of death at all. The holy ancient robe he was wearing was also brand new. The Permitha golden bridge under his feet was even more dazzling and magnificent. It was not affected at all. Seeing this, Su Anda flipped the Book of Life and Death again. This time, the flipping speed was much faster, and the pages rustled. In the dazzling light, the appearance of the Book of Life and Death became much clearer. It was an antique book, and every page seemed to be a world of its own. Every page seemed to record the life and death of thousands of living beings. Zhu Yi could even vaguely see that there seemed to be a small wheel of light spinning in it, controlling the cycle of life and death. The Permitha golden bridge pressed down, and the Book of Life and Death surged with misty gray light, blocking the golden bridge. For a moment, there were only two colors left in the world, gray and gold. The gold was above, and the gray was below. The two colors divided the world equally, not giving way to each other. At this time, in the divine sense of Xiao Yan, Wang Lin, and the others, it was as if there were two worlds of creation in front of them that kept pressing against each other. At this moment, Zhu Yi had already manifested the Yuanshan incarnation of the Wenhua Tai Chi diagram, shrouding the sky above the golden bridge, and exerted all his strength. In this world, besides the heavenly immortal sword, any other sword will be absorbed by this sect-returning scabbard. If you have already reached the creation stage, this sect-returning scabbard of Shu Mountain will not be able to do anything to you. However, after all, you have not completed your training. Jia Luoshe threw his head back and laughed, pressing down on the heaven-punishing sword in the scabbard. The heaven-punishing sword shook violently, and the sect-returning scabbard trembled incessantly. A faint red light shone from it, and the surface of the scabbard even began to crack. This sword is indeed violent. Even the sect-returning scabbard can only absorb it temporarily. If I keep it for too long, it will probably shatter. However, this period of time is enough for me to return to Shu Mountain. Chapter 867. The sect-returning scabbard was the ultimate treasure of Shu Mountain, second only to the immortal heaven sword. It was rarely taken out and was used to guard the great immortal heaven sword formation. This was a rule of the Shu Mountain sword sect: if the sect-returning scabbard left the mountain, the immortal heaven sword must guard it. This treasure had no offensive ability, and its only function was to collect all the swords in the world. Other than the immortal heaven sword, any sword, magic treasure, or sword Dao divine ability that attacked the sect-returning scabbard would be captured by it without any room for resistance. However, this matter was extremely secretive, and only a few people in the entire Shu Mountain sword sect knew about it. Rumor had it that the immortal heaven sword was the origin and ancestor of all swords in the great heaven world. However, the immortal heaven sword was not completely refined and was still in its embryonic stage. It gave birth to two treasures that were completed before the immortal heaven sword, and one of them was the sect-returning scabbard. From these two treasures, three great ancient swords were born: the ancient heavenly sword, the ancient firmament sword, and the ancient Taiqing sword. After that, all the swords in the world were born, which was the principle of Tao begets one, one begets two, two begets three, and three begets all things. Jia Luoshe came prepared this time. It was because he brought the sect-returning scabbard that he dared to face the sky-crushing sword alone. However, the sword intent of the sky-crushing sword was independent of the immortal heaven sword, so it was extremely difficult for the sect-returning scabbard to restrain it. Although the sky-crushing sword had not been completely refined, the sect-returning scabbard itself was trembling violently. If this dragged on for too long, the sky-crushing sword might even destroy the sect-returning scabbard. Jia Luoshe didn't dare to delay any longer and turned to leave. For him, the biggest goal of this trip was to take away the sky-crushing sword. With the sky-crushing sword in hand, he could consider other things if he had the energy to spare, but if he didn't, then he had to first secure the sky-crushing sword. Where do you think you're going? Although Zhu Yi was also surprised that the sky-crushing sword was temporarily taken away, he didn't slow down. The Paramitha Golden Bridge suddenly exerted force and forcibly shook off the life and death book. Then, it turned into a golden rainbow and blocked Jialuosher's path. Su Anda looked deeply at the Paramitha Golden Bridge. It was indeed a good thing, but it would take a lot of effort to collect it. Su Anda didn't dare to stay too long after Shi Tianfang was strangely suppressed to death. Therefore, at this moment, the golden Paramitha bridge was blocking the falling rocks, and Su Anda did not obstruct them much. The Book of Life and Death forced Xiao Yan and the others to retreat. He stretched out his hand and swept up streaks of black light that resembled silk ribbons. He went deep into the Yin-Yang Sea and grabbed at the light ball at the bottom of the sea. It would be much easier for him to obtain this treasure. Luo Qinggu and Wu Tong were shocked. Luo Qinggu pursed her lips tightly, but her eyes were filled with determination. The purple-clothed girl who had been sitting cross-legged on Wudong's head stood up. She formed a sword art with her left hand and pointed it at Wudong, allowing Wudong to receive her sword intent. Then, she pointed the tip of Profound Che's sword in her right hand. All of a sudden, a dim and silent icy blue sword light flashed in the dark Yin-Yang Sea, and there was a faint white brilliance circulating within it. The rolling waves of the pitch-black Yin-Yang Sea suddenly paused. In the next moment, more than half of the vast sea instantly turned into a glacier. However, it wasn't the black ice crystals that had formed before, but the icy blue ice crystals that flickered with a pale white brilliance. A cold nirvanic true intent flowed out from it. The Yin-Yang Sea turned into a huge ice sword and slashed at the black ribbon of light that Su Anda was grabbing at the light ball. 10 Earth's Absolute Yin Sword. It was the 10 Earth's Absolute Yin Sword that had transformed more than half of the Yin-Yang Sea into the power of the nirvanic Absolute Yin. As soon as this sword appeared, Luo Qinggu let out a muffled groan, and the blood on her face instantly faded. Although she could transform pure Yin into absolute Yin, this sword had far exceeded her limit, so much so that she had hurt herself before hurting the enemy. The power of this sword was also extremely strong. After being slashed by the icy blue sword light emitted by the ice sword, the black light emitted by Su Anda instantly froze into ice crystals. Then, it turned into dust and disappeared. It's indeed extraordinary, but your cultivation level is too low. At most, you can only have the power of one sword. Su Anda's expression was calm. His palm once again grabbed at the light ball. Little junior sister, be careful. Retreat first. When Zhu Yi saw this scene, a cold light flashed in his eyes. His two hands moved together to form a magic art, and then he suddenly put his hands together. 3 rays of light descended from the golden Paramitha bridge. Like a flight of stairs, they led Xiao Yan, Wang Lin, and Shi Tianhao to the top of the golden bridge. Their gazes met, and as they communicated with their divine senses, the 4 of them already had an idea of what to do. Shi Tianhao smiled. How long has it been since the 4 of us joined forces to fight against an enemy? Xiao Yan smiled. It's been too long. Is it the first time the Sand Continent opened its doors? No, at that time, we fought on our own. If we really want to talk about joining forces, I'm afraid we have to go back to when we first followed Master to Jade Capital Mountain. That time, Master was also in seclusion. Then, 2 cultivators from the Taishu Temple and Shu Mountain came to us in the Golden Elixir period. At that time, we had just built our foundation. Wang Lin smiled faintly at the side. I'm still at the Qi refinement stage. Shi Tianhao clapped his hands and smiled. It's indeed been a long time. Today, let's relive it together again. A smile also appeared on Zhu Yi's face. I created the 4 symbols Great Cycle formation with this day in mind. Xiao Yan laughed. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go. That's right. For symbols great cycle formation, open. With a soft shout, Zhu Yi's primordial spirit incarnation of the Wenhua Taiji diagram appeared again. It floated above the Permitha Golden Bridge. On the huge Taiji diagram, the images of the dragon, phoenix, turtle, and Qilin rose and fell. Xiao Yan's voice was like spring thunder, duo. Although his injuries had not healed, the primordial spirit incarnation of the flaming Taiji diagram still appeared. The Taiji diagram, which was completely formed by flames, turned the void into a world of flames. A sea of pure white pure yang true fire spread, lifting up Zhu Yi's four spirits. Then, the nether evil blaze, solar true fire, Nanmingli fire, and mysterious heavenly tribulation flame respectively attached themselves to the four spirits of the dragon, phoenix, turtle, and Qilin. The flames burned fiercely, adding a domineering aura to Zhu Yi's four spirits. Wang Lin closed his eyes calmly. In a flash, he also manifested the primordial spirit incarnation of the netherworld Taiji diagram. On the netherworld Taiji diagram, the four demon gates opened, revealing four worlds. Zhu Yi's four spirits passed through the four demon gates, smelting the concepts of life and death, the past and the present, true and false, and karma. Shi Tianhao smiled and manifested the primordial Taiji diagram. The images of Suani, Tao Tai, Cheong Qi, and Hun Dun shattered, turning into green fire, black soil, dirty water, and an invisible storm. Together, they added to the four spirits, making the dragon, phoenix, turtle, and Qilin even more ferocious. The power of the four spirits promoted each other and kept fusing. The surging spiritual energy turned into a huge ring, repeating and harmonizing, carrying the profound great Tao of heaven and earth. When the heavenly cycle Great Circle was added to the golden bridge of the Permitha realm, the Permitha realm golden bridge suddenly became even more majestic. The originally majestic golden bridge suddenly became extremely domineering, forcefully suppressing the book of life and death. Su Anda was slightly stunned. He saw that the golden light was already right in front of him, smashing towards his head. The golden light continued to shine. The void shattered and disintegrated into nothingness. With this terrifying strength, Su Anda was sure that even if there was a dimensional realm in front of him, it would still be smashed apart by this berserk Permitha bridge. He didn't dare to be careless. He mobilized all the magic power in his body and used the secret divine ability of the king of the underworld. At the same time, he used the Samadhi life and death Hades Tao fruit, manifesting three great nascent divinity powerhouses, to block it. But at this moment, the Permitha Golden Bridge's concept of power was completely unleashed. It surpassed everything, led everything, and was unhindered by anything. The majestic power crushed through the layers of barriers and blasted towards Su Anda. Su Anda's eyes had already turned completely black. His hands changed hand seals, and the book of life and death flipped rapidly. A gray world appeared, and in this world, there were countless lifeless faces. They were indifferent to the Permitha Golden Bridge that was rushing towards them. But this gray world seemed to be connected to the entire boundless world, and it actually activated some of the boundless world's power. It was like the true home of billions of lives in the boundless world after they died, silently bearing everything. This vast concept of power barely withstood the attack of the Permitha Golden Bridge, but half of the gray world was directly destroyed by the Golden Bridge. The dead souls within it were all twisted, and their originally wooden faces revealed painful yet silent wails. And the boundless world seemed to shake. Everyone present, including Xiao Yan and the others who manifested their nascent divinities, felt uncomfortable. Illusions appeared in front of them, and they seemed to see their own deaths. But they quickly calmed their minds, and the Permitha Golden Bridge continued to crush down. It even forced Jia Luoshi, who was trying to leave, back again. Jia Luoshi, Su Anda, Zhang Enrui, Taoist Sky Ghost, Tao Master Dong Ming, and the others stared at the golden bridge that looked like a divine bridge from the heavens. They stared at the four Taiji diagrams that blotted out the sky above the bridge. For a moment, they were speechless. Even almighty powerhouses like Su Anda and Jia Luoshi were shocked. Those were only 4 disciples of the Taoist sect's master, and 4 nascent divinity transformation realm cultivators. The personal disciples of the Taoist sect's master are really amazing. Zhang Enrui muttered to himself. The 4 heroes of the Taoist sect are well deserved. Let's not talk about what will happen to Xianmen Tianzong in the future, but the 4 heroes of the Taoist sect will definitely leave their names in history together with their master. Xiao Dongtian, who had not performed much since the start of the battle, and who had joined forces with the Xiantian seal, was still beaten into a sorry state by Xiao Yan and Shi Tianhao. At this moment, his eyes flashed, and he looked at the yin-yang ocean. So, other than the white jade pillar, Xianmen Tianzong actually hid a creation treasure embryo. The 4 heroes of the Taoist sect are indeed extraordinary, but you are still unable to split yourselves. He suddenly put his palms together, and a small will made of white jade appeared. Then, an astonishing aura erupted from his body, and streams of spiritual power traversed the heavens and gathered on the white jade wheel. The white jade wheel immediately turned into a wheel of light. A powerful force that seemed to cover the heavens and control the fate of all living beings in the world, and dominate and suppress the heavens and the realms, spread out. This was a treasure that could temporarily borrow the divine power of the Great Celestial Wheel and temporarily turn itself into the Great Celestial Wheel. Although it was a one-time consumable, at this moment, it was almost equivalent to the real Great Celestial Wheel descending, and it had at least 80% of the Great Celestial Wheel's power. Once this treasure appeared, Xiao Dongtian forcibly broke through the yin-yang ocean and pounced towards the light ball. The Permitha Bridge came to stop him, but it was attacked by the Great Celestial Will replica and Su Anda's Book of Life and Death. At the same time, Su Anda's hand also grabbed towards the light ball in the yin-yang ocean. As for Jia Luoshi, he seized the time and flew away, wholeheartedly bringing the heaven-punishing sword back to Shushan. The combined strength of Zhu Yi and the other 3 was extremely ferocious. Relying on the Permitha Bridge, they could temporarily resist 1 against 2. The magnificent golden light fixed the Book of Life and Death and the Great Celestial Will replica in the void. However, at this moment, the situation suddenly changed. The Book of Life and Death flashed slightly, and actually broke through the void, wanting to escape from Su Anda's control and leave. Chapter 868. This sudden change caused everyone present to be slightly stunned. The powerful creation magic treasure, the Book of Life and Death, was about to break free from Su Anda's control and fly away. After a moment of shock, Su Anda's eyes flashed with understanding. Master! Your Majesty, you're really good at scheming. In the void where the Book of Life and Death was about to fly away, a child who was only 2 or 3 years old but had the demeanor of an adult could be vaguely seen. His eyes were darker and deeper than Su Anda's. He was looking at Su Anda calmly. Not only the Book of Life and Death, but even the 3 life and death nether Dao fruits that Su Anda had taken out were stirring. They turned into black lights and flew away with the Book of Life and Death. Su Anda took a deep breath. Master, forgive me, but I can't admit defeat just like that. Black light surged around his body, and thousands of spirits rose within it. He released 3 more life and death nether Dao fruits. These 3 Dao fruits were all condensed by his own magic power. They flew into the air and entangled the Dao fruits that were about to fly away with the Book of Life and Death. Su Anda unleashed his magic power to the extreme. Streaks of black light wrapped around the Book of Life and Death, not letting the Book of Life and Death escape his control. He had long forgotten about the light ball in the yin-yang sea. To him, the most important thing now was the Book of Life and Death. This was the supreme treasure of the netherworld Tao that he had painstakingly created with all his heart and soul. Once Su Anda let go, Xiao Dongtian was in big trouble. How could he fight against the golden Permitha bridge that was activated by Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, Wang Lin, and Shi Tianhao with the magic power of the imitation Great Heavenly Wheel? This imitation temporarily borrowed the power of the creation magic treasure. Against opponents below the creation realm, it was naturally successful and awe-inspiring. However, against the real creation magic treasure, the golden Paramitha bridge, of the same level, it immediately showed its fear. Xiao Yan and the others quickly came to a decision. They temporarily ignored Su Anda and the Book of Life and Death and focused on defeating Xiao Dongtian with all their might. Then, they immediately intercepted the falling rocks, not allowing him to take away the heaven-punishing sword. Xiao Dongtian had no choice but to retract the power of the imitation Great Celestial Will into his body, turning it into a light will that revolved around the world to resist the pressure brought by the Paramitha Golden Bridge. He could only watch helplessly as the power of the light will was rapidly consumed, and its luster gradually dimmed. Cracks had already appeared on the surface of the white jade will that was infused with the divine power of the great heavenly wheel. Xiao Dongtian's face was as gloomy as still water. Suddenly, an ominous premonition arose in his heart. It was because of the setback before him, but there were other reasons as well. His usually calm state of mind actually produced a feeling of slight panic, as if something extremely bad was about to happen. At Xiao Dongtian's level, his sudden inspiration allowed him to sense the world. Such a feeling was not groundless. But he couldn't be sure, and there seemed to be a dense fog shrouding his eyes. Putting aside the fact that he couldn't grasp the specifics, he couldn't even tell if it had already happened, was happening, or was about to happen. The more it was like this, the worse and more dangerous the situation was. This was because it meant that the danger was beyond his understanding. Xiao Dongtian looked at Mount Yujing in front of him, and a thought arose in his heart. Could it be, on the southeast coastline of the great Zhou dynasty in the Divine Land, the waves slapped against the reefs? Everything appeared tranquil and peaceful, completely unaffected by the great battle that was taking place far away in the horizon. Fishermen went out to sea to fish as usual. A few faint beams of light flashed across the horizon, but they were only cultivators of the Golden Elixir period and the Foundation Establishment period passing by, attracting the worship of ordinary mortals. In the sky above the surface of the sea, there was a faintly discernible figure in the void. However, it was not truly in the Great Thousand Worlds, but in the turbulence of the void. It was just that there was a faint door that was connected to the Great Thousand Worlds. Outside the void of the Divine Land, in the dark space, a huge pagoda floated silently. Rays of vermilion light sprinkled down from the pagoda, turning into colorful ribbons that extended into the depths of the void, like silk ribbons tying the vermilion pagoda in the air. One of the 9 treasures of the ancient Heavenly Gate, the Southwest Vermilion Pagoda. This treasure was at the peak of the Incarnation Realm. It had a grotto heaven inside, and it had the ability to absorb stars and change moons. It was quite magical, and it was one of the few treasures among the 9 treasures of the ancient Heavenly Gate that hadn't suffered a calamity. One of the great effects of the Vermilion Pagoda was that it could freely hide in the void, making it difficult to trace. Thus, after the Eastern Heavenly Gate obtained the Tao, it was like they had obtained a treasure, and they used it as a grotto heaven. However, the Vermilion Pagoda could fly and move, but as a grotto heaven, it couldn't move freely in the void turbulence like Mount Yujing, appearing and disappearing unpredictably and traversing the heavens. Wherever it hid in the void, when it returned to the Great Thousand World, its position was basically still the same. At this moment, inside the Vermilion Pagoda, a group of Eastern Heavenly Gate cultivators gathered together and discussed. They were all hoping that their gate master would be able to gain something from this trip to Kunlun Mountain. They hoped that this time, the various clans would join hands to destroy Xian and truly destroy Xianmen Tianzong. An Eastern Heavenly Gate cultivator said hatefully, Yin Sangchen was captured, causing the original location of the Vermilion Pagoda to be exposed, causing us to have no choice but to move the mountain gate on a large scale to prevent the Xian Gate Master from finding it. If we can completely destroy Xianmen Tianzong this time, it can be considered as having vented the anger in Yinghai. A person beside him shook his head, Gate Master and the others aren't just acting on impulse this time. If we can obtain Xianmen Tianzong's Mount Yujing, then our Eastern Heavenly Gate can immediately take over Xianmen Tianzong. At that time, even the great Zhou Empire will have to be respectful to us. We will inherit the orthodoxy of the Heavenly Gate and welcome the day of true revival, once again becoming an influential force in the Divine Land's human world. Another person said, even if we can't obtain Mount Yujing, if we can obtain the white jade pillar produced by Yingzhou Immortal Mountain, it will also be a leap in raising our Eastern Heavenly Gate's strength. If Gate Master succeeds in Tao integration, what our Eastern Heavenly Gate lacks compared to the top forces in the Divine Land is a creation magic treasure that can suppress fate. The Great Celestial Will has fallen into the hands of the Marquis of Xuanji, it is after all a layer away from us. The Nine Heavens sword is still only an illusion, this white jade pillar is extremely important to the rise of our Eastern Heavenly Gate. Everyone nodded. Now that the Master of the Profound Gate has gone missing and the Zhu clan is working together to destroy the Profound Gate, this is our best opportunity. Someone said hesitantly, I'm just afraid that the Master of the Celestial Gate will come back for revenge. Although the Vermilion Heaven Pagoda has moved, the Master of the Celestial Gate is unfathomable. If he has a way to follow the traces and find us, the cultivator who spoke first gritted his teeth and said, what are you afraid of? When he returns, Jade Jing Mountain, White Jade Pillar, and other treasures will all be lost, and his strength will definitely be greatly reduced. At that time, he will still have to face the encirclement of the exterminating Xian coalition. At that time, the one who should be afraid should be him. If he's smart, he'll hide on Yingzhou Mountain in the Yinghai Sea obediently and stay silent, silently agreeing to what happened today. Otherwise, he'll be besieged and killed by so many experts in the end. Even Yingzhou Mountain will be lost, and Xianmen Tianzong will be completely cut off. Before they could finish, they suddenly felt the Vermilion Heaven Pagoda shake violently. It was as if there was an earthquake in a house on the ground. But they were now in the void, inside the Vermilion Heaven Pagoda, a magic treasure at the peak of the Incarnation Realm. The other low-level cultivators didn't know, but the Essence Soul cultivator of the Eastern Heavenly Gate, who stayed behind to guard the mountain gate under Xiao Dongtian's name, was terrified at that moment. Through the Dharma power restriction of the Vermilion Heaven Pagoda, he could clearly see a huge hand condensed by purple gas directly reaching out from the void. Its 5 fingers opened and grabbed the Vermilion Heaven Pagoda. The Vermilion Heaven Pagoda was surrounded by a treasure light, and its size rapidly increased, trying to break free. At the same time, countless brilliance lit up outside the pagoda, turning into layers of light fog, creating a clear sky world. Billions of runes gathered and turned into a huge array, protecting the Vermilion Heaven Pagoda. But the huge hand that covered the sky turned a blind eye to this, and it didn't have any special power, but wherever its palm and fingers went, the sky instantly collapsed. Space, time, storms, and everything in the world were all destroyed, and the array was instantly turned into nothingness. The huge hand grabbed the Vermilion Heaven Pagoda, and it immediately couldn't move, and the scarlet treasure light all over its body disappeared. This huge hand of purple gas just grabbed the Vermilion Heaven Pagoda like it was grabbing a small teacup, and then gently shook it in the air. There was no sound coming from the pagoda, and all the people who talked just now had all turned into ashes and disappeared. But the Vermilion Heaven Pagoda itself wasn't damaged, and the people who didn't speak were safe and sound, staring at the horrifying scene in front of them with their mouths open. The group of people subconsciously covered their mouths. The huge hand grabbed the Vermilion Heaven Pagoda, and then put it back into the void. It couldn't be seen on the Divine Land, but all the living beings were strangely shocked. They looked up at the sky in confusion, as if there was an invisible giant shuttling through the void, walking step by step between heaven and earth. At this moment, in the mountain gate of the Southern Wasteland's reincarnation sect, although the Heavenly Path cultivators didn't follow Shi Tianfang to Mount Kunlun, they were still paying close attention to the battle over there, waiting for good news. Meng Bei and Du Ting, who went to the Kunlun Mountains Dharma Assembly with Tao Master Tian Tan and Shen Qifeng, were now together, also discussing the Xian-destroying battle. Du Ting's eyes lit up, and he said excitedly, Master, this time we can definitely make that arrogant Xianmen Tianzong pay the price. Meng Bei also nodded, that's right, Xianmen Tianzong has gotten used to being domineering all these years, but he doesn't know that the tallest tree in the forest is the first to be destroyed by the wind. This time, the Xian Gate's sect master has mysteriously disappeared, and this is Xianmen Tianzong's doom. Du Ting rubbed his hands, This time, the sect master brought most of the powerful cultivators of the reincarnation sect to attack together. Obviously, he is determined to get the Xian Gate's treasures, but I wonder how much he will gain. Meng Bei said, the Great Zhou dynasty is being held back by the Great Qin dynasty, and the sect master's biggest opponent this time is the Mount Shu sword sect. It's hard to say how much he will gain, but it will be best if he can get the Yujing mountain. In another quiet room, there was a man lying on the ground. His face was gray, and his originally fat body had lost a lot of weight, but he still looked very bloated. His small eyes flashed with a vicious light. It was Yang Likuan, who was beaten up by Zhou Yunsong at the Kunlun Mountains Dharma Assembly. His laughter was like that of an owl. Little bastard, it's really lucky for you to fall into the hands of the great saint of the demon clan. Otherwise, I will definitely make you suffer a fate worse than death after we break through the Yujing mountain. But don't be too proud of yourself. If you die, your brothers and sisters, and those disciples of Xianmen Tianzong, none of them will be able to escape. Kill. 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 All the people of Xianmen Tianzong should die, they should all be killed. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.